So we should be live. Perfect. Perfect new profile picture for the stream. So hello everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of the Jaded Talk. We are talking about Specter of the Past today. Jesus. Thank fuck. I'm once again joined by Pico. How are you doing? And because we're speaking about Specter of the Past, how did you like the book?
I love this book
Mm-hmm.
more than most people. I think
Mhm.
I've read it 3 times now. I think
Okay.
maybe 4.
Jesus, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Am I
Yeah.
getting background noise? I think my thing's going off.
It's fine to me. I don't think there's anything.
Okay, it's probably like a very tiny one then. That's
Mhm.
is causing the mic to go off. Cool.
Oh yeah, might be. But I mean, I haven't heard anything yet, so I think you're fine. But yeah, I can only agree. Spectre of the Past. Damn, it was so enjoyable reading this book and just seeing characters being the way they're supposed to be. You know, it's a crazy idea, but they act with consistency as you would expect. It's like, yeah, I've seen this character act this way before, and now they're just continuing on from there. It's a pretty good feeling, when that happens, because it doesn't feel like shit when you're reading it. So, yeah, I can only agree. I've really, really liked this book a lot, and we're going to talk about it now for a while, I think. So let's just quickly take a look at the cover. It's, I mean, more or less what you expect. You have Luke, Han, Leia. Nothing really too crazy going on there. They look pretty nicely drawn. That's actually pretty cool. And with outfits, at least to me, that don't look too familiar on them. I mean, Han looks pretty familiar, but they seem as though they're wearing something else. So that's pretty neat. But in any case, they're nicely drawn. In the background, obviously, there's only space here. And we have a Bothan, I think, here in on the cover as well. I would assume that's Borskvalia, um, without knowing anything more. But yeah, seems to me the most likely possibility. And I mean, Spectre of the Past. That's the title. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what you're getting in this book. The German title is basically the same. I mean, it's basically Spectre of the Past as well. And yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about that here. It's perfectly serviceable, and it tells you more or less what you need to know or what you should expect, to say the least. And yeah, I would say without further ado, let's just get started with this with chapter 1. So the first chapter starts with Pelion, a character I've definitely missed. I'm sorry, his appearance in Darksaber doesn't count. I'm
It wasn't
not
enough.
yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Pelion and Darksaber. Unpopular thing, but yeah, there you go. We finally have him as a big focus. He's gonna be in this book a lot, and in the next one, as far as I've read as well. So that's pretty good. And yeah, he is pretty defeatist. He's pretty miserable, actually. He acknowledges that more or less the Empire has basically lost the war at this point, and also the Empire has lost its former glory. And he's very introspective about all of that. And although the whole Empire thing, I don't know, you feel like it's been told enough already. Like, can we move on from the Empire? But now that you get a high-ranking Imperial acknowledging that, yeah, this thing is kind of over, it still kind of hits hard a bit, which is actually pretty nice that they've managed to do that. Because yeah, Pelion is a character that you don't really hate, even like as a villain. He's like, Pelion is a pretty honorable, hardworking man who really isn't cartoonishly evil in any sense. So it's like, damn, yeah, you don't necessarily want to see him sad. At least that's my experience with this. I don't want him to feel sad because yeah, Pelion is not a horrible guy. Hey Brennan, it's going pretty well. We're talking about a book I think both of us have looked forward to for quite a while at this point. It's been a few months since we started going on this journey, and to reach this place is a nice feeling, I have to say. So yeah, we have this. It signalizes sort of the end of an era, and he has a new plan now, which is okay. We've lost. There's no way to turn this ship around in a military way. So what Palion's thing is gonna be throughout what I assume basically the entire series is to send a negotiator to the New Republic to negotiate a capitulation by the Empire. It's like, damn, okay, we've reached the end game now. It's kind of crazy to think about that. And yeah, we have that, and we have a pretty nicely done training battle. Just a mock battle there. Pelion organizes a fight that makes his crew fight against enemies that are basically impossibly strong. Like there is no enemy that is as strong as those that Pelion lets his fighters fly against. But he's like, your enemies won't fight fair, and you'll probably be outnumbered. You'll probably be overpowered. So it's best to be prepared for everything. And if you're prepared for the worst of the worst, then you're going to be, of course, prepared even better for weaker enemies. And we get some new technology, which has not had the biggest impact on the story yet, but I feel like it's gonna happen in a way, which is a cloaking device. It works in the way that people can't see you, like they can't see your ship, but also your sensors and your vision does not work on the outside as well, which is a pretty good drawback of this device. I feel like if you want to do something like this cloaking device, it's pretty important that you put up something that makes it risky and not just we're invisible, we can't be seen. And I feel like that's a pretty well solution to that. It works on them, but it also works on you. So better make sure you really want to do this. And we have another new tech thing called the Predictor. It's basically an automatic targeting assist, more or less. That's what it is. And it's been acquired in a desperate attempt of the Empire to regain its strength. It is kind of fruitless since the effects that are intended are not really happening. It's a bit less effective than the Empire hoped it would be, and it makes sort of sense they would buy this thing, this desperate attempt to somehow gain back a bit of power that they've lost. It's like, yeah, they are trying everything that is possible. Like, yeah, makes sense that they would try that. And other than that, there's not a lot to say here. That's the first chapter. It's just on Pelion. And yeah, when I read the first chapter, I was already like, oh, thank God. We're back in familiar. Yeah, it's refreshing. Yeah, we're back in familiar territory. It's what we've actually wanted for quite a while now, and it's great. It's great that we're back. That's pretty nice. Yeah, that's chapter 1. Really, chapter 2. Oh yeah. So chapter 2, we are with Luke now. Luke has a fun little quip, and it's the beginning of something that I'm gonna be more and more happy about as this book series goes on, which is meta commentary by Timothy Zahn through his characters.
But that's the thing. It's through his characters. Use exactly things they would actually say, not just changing on the fly so that the author can insert some meta commentary.
Exactly. That's very important. And I know people usually a lot of people are not a fan of meta commentary, especially if it's about a piece of work that the author very obviously does not like or does not appreciate in a way. And I understand to an extent, but honestly, if that author has a point or 24 points, then maybe it's worth it. It's like, yeah, I mean,
it may not be nice to dissect other people's work in your own and basically call it insanely bad. But if you're correct, I'm sorry, I have a hard time feeling really bad. So yeah, those are gonna be very, very interesting and very entertaining and basically very true every time. So let's just jump to the first one. Luke has just a little quip, and it's comparatively uninsulting, which is, "Wow, the Falcon must have flown without problem for once." Like, yeah, the Falcon has been a thing in the Phantom era. It's driven me to the point where at the end of the Corellian trilogy, I was like, can somebody please fucking destroy this thing and never fly it again, because I hate this ship now and I used to love it. Like, yeah, this piece of junk that almost kills all 3 of your children and your wife. Whoopsie, that happens, you know.
This one also makes sense, like without all the context, just on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just read them, or watched the movies, and then came to here, it still fits.
Yeah, it's like the Falcon seems like I mean, if I'm very charitable with it, I would say the Falcon is like a high risk, high reward kind of ship, which is that if things work, it's pretty good. Like it's better than the average, I would say. But the fact of the matter is that it working is not really that usual. So yeah, in the rare chance that your ship works as it's intended, then it's pretty good. But that's not happening a lot. So yeah, there you go. If you've just
it's
seen
like
the movie,
Spider-Man running out of web fluid. It only happens when it needs to happen.
That's a pretty good sentence, actually. Yeah, it only happens when it needs to happen. That fits the bill entirely, because you'll see that the Falcon most of the times will work just fine. Like it'll fly, it'll shoot, it'll start and land. It's pretty uncomplicated unless the story needs it to not work. Which, I mean, every story is convenient in a way, like in some capacity, but yeah, sometimes it doesn't feel good, and the Falcon was the subject to that feeling quite a bit, which is sad. I love the ship, but yeah, it's been ruined. Destroy that fucking thing already. We have even more meta commentary. This one hits a bit closer to home and is also equally true, which is quote by Han, I think. Yeah. Leia and the children just need a bit of free time together. And this time, I won't let them be called to another stupid diplomatic mission, especially if she's officially on holiday. Yeah. With I'm sorry, every diplomat, every leader is on vacation. Like, that's a thing that exists. I'm sorry. Like, King Wilhelm II was on vacation right before the World War I started. It's a thing that exists, and Leia can go to vacation. She just needs to do it. The fact that this never happened, and that this never happening is also the premise for an entire book, which I really, really hate, but I'm not going to get into this again, is pretty sad. So this is a funny thing where I'm like, it feels so stupid to point this out. Like you could very well say that Timothy Zahn seems like he's talking to retarded people when he says that, like, hey, she can go to a vacation with her family. That's okay. But the thing is, it's never happened really. So I feel like, well, I guess I need to point it out because nobody made it happen for whatever reason, I guess.
The only time she gets to hang out with her kids is like Crystal Star, and they get kidnapped.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't go down too well either. I guess she spends limited amount of time with 2 of them in the Jedi Academy trilogy. Yeah, they almost get killed by Sith monsters from the jungle there, That's also not good. Yeah, so she doesn't need to do that, and that's totally okay, actually. So it's good that that is pointed out. And yeah, so what Luke, Chewie, and Han now do is go to a planet called Ifigen. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Ifigen, somewhere around there.
Maybe?
No clue. Ifigen, I guess that probably sounds the least weird. Yeah. And they are there to negotiate between two species, and that negotiation is going to be more and more important in the book, which is between the Diamala and the Ishori. And Luke isn't welcome in those peace talks for reasons that we don't immediately find out, but it's gonna get told to us a bit later. Han, while they're on that planet, recognizes that a pirate attack is incoming, and what he does is he chooses not to tell the people on Ifigen immediately, because he wants to avoid the risk that any possible spies are on the planet, and that he may risk of decreasing the New Republic's reputation even more by, if there were spies on the planet, they would call off the attack. Nobody would be there, even though Han has now basically put the entire planet into state of emergency, and nothing happens. Of course, that would not be good for the reputation of the New Republic. So it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense so far. They have a fight then. So actually, pirates are arriving. They have a fight. Han and Luke join that fight. They probably at that point should have immediately informed the planet. They don't, but I mean, they basically leave pretty quickly anyway. But yeah, that's something that happens. Luke has a very, very weird vision where he sees both the Emperor and also Exar Kun. Like, they are like represented in very big hats, and they are laughing at him. So that just stands on its own as well for now, and was like, okay, want to see what that means. Exactly. So they're trying to figure out what exactly has happened here, and they managed to get Talon Card to help them. Remember Talon Card? That was a character that used to exist.
I like Talon.
I was like, oh, yeah, Talon Card is pretty nice. It's like, he's a character. He works pretty well. He's cool, and he hasn't been there for quite a while. It's like, oh yeah, there you go. He exists. And Luke isn't that excited about the prospect of getting help from Talon. And the reason, like, I think Talon is the one who guesses it. The reason is, quote, because, let me guess, Mara. And there's no affirmation that Mara is the reason, but it's pretty obvious that, yes, she is. It's like, damn, Luke acknowledges the existence of this character that seemed to be, like, semi-important. That's cool. I mean, that's nice, yeah. And yeah, now we get more context on why Luke wasn't allowed in the negotiations. It's that they don't trust Luke because he is too powerful and scares them, because, quote, people like him always turn to the dark. And Han, so Han says, yeah, you were weird in the past, but he says, I don't understand the Force. If Luke, if you say you have everything under control, I believe you, I trust you. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing for me. I never quite figured that out, is how public was it that Luke was a traitor to the New Republic? Because it seems as though nobody knows, really.
I was under the impression that it was supposed to be everyone that knew, but
yeah,
I guess not.
I mean, that would make sense to me. Like,
he's supposed to be a Vader-like figure at that point, but
yeah,
okay.
And like if Palpatine wants to win against the New Republic, you would assume he would also wage a propaganda war, which is like, hey, look, the biggest hero of the New Republic joined my side. You're fucked, basically. So it looks like this is something everyone should know. But yeah, I think when we decided that is a thing that can happen, nobody really questioned the ramifications of making Luke join the Emperor. And I think that's just been, put away, like, oh yeah, no, let's not do that. That's not going to be helpful. And yeah, so it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, if we consider the amount of public, examples people have about the Jedi right now, it's like they have Luke, who has turned to the dark side. They have Kip Duran, who is, he's done his stuff. And
may or may not have gone to the dark side. Either way, needs some purging, exactly. I guess. Well, I guess he's graduated now, so
yeah, it's basically like, okay, that's happened in the past. We're not talking about it anymore. Shut up. It's a thing now. We ignore it. But yeah, it's like, okay. I mean, the galaxy does, didn't have a lot of exposure to the Jedi in the years since the end of the rebellion, but the few people that they have seen, it's like, yeah, they are not the best role model. So it's like, okay, makes sense. Yeah, Luke briefly even contemplates, like, regarding his little episode, that he didn't have a choice about that in the past. I'm like, well, okay. But yeah, I was like, I like where this is going. It's crazy thought. We're not the biggest fans of Dark Empire around here, so yeah, that's it. It's good to explore that a bit, even though I feel like it's kind of too late to explore Dark Empire Luke now. Like, either you do it around that time or you never do it again, because at some point the window just closes. I feel like
you should do it. Yeah, you should just do it like during the thing, or immediately after.
Yeah,
but
either during or like around the time of Jedi Academy trilogy, when we learn more about the aftermath and we can get more from Luke. But if we don't get it around that time, I'm sorry, the window closes. Like, at some point, okay, it's happened. Nothing happening here anymore. Moving on. That's just kind of how it is to us, I guess. And yeah. Oh yeah, we get more meta commentary, which is Luke. He briefly remembers his past entanglement, let's call it, with Callista. And what he thinks about Callista is, quote, she once loved him and then somehow was scared by him, end quote. Like, yeah, that's kind of what happened. That's just it. But this is the most respectful mention of Callista, in my opinion, that you can make without bullshitting your audience. So I
it's still kind of gaslighting what happened.
Yeah, it is, but
which I can concede is a problem. Mm-hmm. I just think it's funny.
It is hilarious. You remember when you read about Callista? That feels like it's been just... Yeah, me neither. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that was a character. Let's move on. Chapter 3. Leia. We are back with Leia, and she's on this neat little planet called Wayland. I've heard this planet before, so that's good. And, she thinks about joining Han in his little venture for, political negotiations, but it's like, I mean, I've gone here, like, he's gone there without me, and if I now go back to him, like, while the first round seems to have been unsuccessful, it would send out, a signal that Han is a failure, that Han did a mistake, and now, like, the chef needs to go back. Like, that's reasonable to me. Makes sense. And we get another mention of a place we haven't heard about for a long time, which is Honogre, so the home planet of the Nogri. And we learn that despite several attempts of rebuilding that planet after, what we've learned, what happened to the planet in the Thrawn trilogy, the planet itself remains uninhabitable to this day. And it's pretty cool to portray it that way. And that, the Nogri are still like collectively sad about that place. Kind of has this parallel to how Leia feels about Alderaan. Of course, there never was a chance to actually rebuild Alderaan as there might have been for Honogre. But yeah, I like the way that that's portrayed. It's very respectful and it's like, yeah, believable. I mean, at some point, a planet, I guess, has been destroyed enough that it is beyond saving. And I feel like makes a whole lot of sense. And something that I feel like I'm going to point this out a few more times, but I've written this down here, so I'm definitely going to mention it here. Leia finally does the one thing, or maybe not the one thing, one of the biggest things I wanted her to do since basically the end of the Thrawn trilogy, which is mention the Force a whole lot more. She admittedly did that in Dark Empire, which was good. That should have been her character progression. More towards being a Jedi. I just didn't like the context of why Leia was so involved in Dark Empire, because of Luke. But I was like, yes, this is a right step for Leia. Become more of a Jedi. You don't need to be a full-blown Jedi. I understand if Leia never becomes like a warrior like Luke, just flying around, battling people, but she should be a Jedi. And this should be part of her personality, of her way of acting, like the way she assesses the world around her. And it just hasn't been a thing for a very long time. We've made memes about this a whole lot. Like we've joked about this a whole lot. That at the beginning of every new book saga, basically Leia's once again like, oh yeah, I don't really have a lot of time for Jedi business. I really should take more time for this. Whereas she's like investing her time in a bunch of other useless fucking ventures. It's like, thank God, this is the Leia that I've wanted. She utilizes the Force much more. Like she calms down herself. She calms down her kids with it. She tries to judge other people when she meets them, like when it's a dire situation that she needs to get under control. She's always seeking this connection to the Force, making her way, like paving her way, making it easier for her by using the Force and utilizing it. And it's like, thank God, this was very, very necessary for a long time, and we've wasted a lot of time not giving Leia really anything remarkably interesting to do for quite a while now. So it's good that she can do this stuff. And yeah, on Wayland, she encounters someone who's called Lakjit. He's a Devorian, I think it was, and he wants to keep some historical data cards that he's found on Wayland. One of them, or I think it was one of them, might have been multiple, have written the Hand of Thrawn on them. It's like, okay, yeah. Now, of course, we want to know more. What is this Hand of Thrawn? He gives up all of them, but one, and he escapes by using a smoke grenade and also stealing a speeder. Of course, Nogri are there guarding the entire place, but he managed to escape anyway. And like, the speeder probably should not have been as easy to steal as it ended up happening. I feel like this was a bit too easy. I mean, I get it. You don't want to portray the Nogri as being like supernatural beings that just can wreck anyone, of course. But like a speeder, I mean, like there should be something like a key, probably, or something equivalent to that disables the speeder from just being able to move when somebody who is not supposed to fly it hops onto it. So yeah. But I do like that the smoke grenade was added, like as an effect to make it believable that the initial escape even works and that the Nogri just don't immediately pin him down. Like, yeah, okay. I mean, there was an acknowledgement that this is something that needs to be addressed, and so that's always good. Yeah, Jason is pretty annoying in this chapter, but that reminded me of the fact that, I mean, yeah, he's kind of a child, so he is annoying. I mean, that's just a thing that is the case. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I can't criticize a child character for being annoying. That's how children are, I guess. And yeah, so Jit, he's escaping, but Leia gets help by Talon and also, welcome back, Mara Jade. So they come to aid. They're both not seen as particularly trustworthy by Leia. It's like, okay, yeah, I can buy this feeling, like, sort of being wary of them. You're not like openly antagonizing them, but you're a bit wary. Like, I can buy this a whole lot more than, they are plotting the destruction of the New Republic as another book series wanted to convince me it could be a possibility. So yeah, it's like, okay, believable. None of them have pledged allegiance to the New Republic. They've done some very, very shady things without ever fully suffering the repercussions. So it's like, yeah, okay, I understand that. Makes sense. And yeah, the documents that Lakjit kept with him was about something that's going to be a centerpiece of this duology, which is the destruction of karmas. So if you vaguely remember, we had a few mentions of those in iJedi, because we had a karmasi in that book that assisted Corran Horn. Now we're going to learn more about this. So there's documents that show something about the destruction of karmas. And there even used to be refugees on Alderaan, like karmasi refugees on Alderaan. Talon Card even used to smuggle food for them. Which specifically the food that's supposed to feed them was on like a list for forbidden import products by the Empire, so, to not just kind of sweep that whole thing away. And yeah, and Bail Organa and the customs officers would let him do it, since they, like, back in that day, already believed that the Empire had something to do with the destruction of karmas. It's like, oh yeah, that's a nice little thing to give Bail's. I mean, that sounds like something Bail Organa would do, so it's like not very surprising that happened. And it's also nice that Talon Card used to do that as well. It helps giving him this, kind of a rogue with a golden heart image that he's supposed to portray, like kind of a Han Solo if Han never joined the New Republic. So yeah, that was nice. And what it reveals something quite shocking, is that the Bothans were involved in sabotaging their planetary shield generator, which now gives additional context to what Borsk failure used to mean back in the day, when he said, there could be compromising information here around Mount Tantus, and we probably should. Like, that's why Borsk failure wanted to come along when they were on Mount Tantus to probably, get those documents for himself and destroy them. And yeah, there you go. That's what we learn now. The Bothans were involved. Of course, we don't know yet which Bothans.
A group of Bothans, not the whole race.
Exactly, yes. So some Bothans, we're not learning who exactly are to blame. Of course, that's going to be now the mystery sort of the duologies. Who exactly was it? Because yeah, that's gonna spur a whole lot of conflict. It's gonna create a whole lot of conflict. And yeah, Mara Jade even was almost sent out to deal with them once, but that ultimately did get dealt with the Death Star, of course, because yeah, no need to go on Alderaan if Alderaan doesn't exist, obviously. And yeah, Leia assumes that Mara Jade knows what or who the Hand of Thrawn is. But it's like, okay, she'll wait for now. She'll speak to the High Council of the New Republic to coordinate everything. And yeah, there you go. And like, thinking back to this chapter, I've also written that down because I didn't get anything from that chapter. There's no explanation given why specifically Lakjit found it right now, like where he got this information from, and why, like if Borsk Failure was aware of this stuff way back, why he never got around to come back to Mount Tantus and search for the documents. That's just something that is in the air. Yeah, that's really all there is to say to it. The Kalmasi thing is going to be one of the more interesting mysteries of this duology. Maybe not necessarily how it's going to be handled, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah, there you go. That's chapter 3. Chapter 4. Pelion, of course, who wants to have peace talks with the New Republic, has a discussion about that with the Moffs. And both sides don't seem like lunatics when they're arguing their position of whether we should try and make peace with the New Republic, because those who are pro peace talks are like, we will just die out completely if we never make peace. That will just slowly but surely conquer planet by planet until the Empire doesn't exist at all anymore, and it's better that we exist. I think they have like 1,000 planets now under their rule still.
1,000 systems.
1,000 system, okay, yeah. So that's quite a lot. But obviously it's nowhere near the size that the Empire used to have. So it's like we should preserve what we have now, lick our wounds, basically rebuild everything that we can, so that at least the new order of the Emperor doesn't die out completely. Whereas those who are against that are like, sure, they can make peace talks with us, but they will eventually just want to destroy us anyway. The New Republic wouldn't just accept the Empire like existing into perpetuity. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, that it makes sense that they would have this fear. It's like, okay, this also gives the New Republic time to regroup, to reorganize, and to eventually just destroy the Empire again, or try to destroy the Empire again. Okay, I mean, it makes sense that they have this fear. Yeah, something I'm still wondering, maybe I should just look like a wiki page or something, is I remember that there was a deep core which very prominently was still under Imperial control, and I'm not sure if they still are. Like, are they still in the deep core? Because I never quite heard anything about that.
The idea is that pretty much after the events of Darksaber, because they lost, that it basically got pushed out of the deep core, and they now only have the tiny bit of wild space they have.
I guess so. Yeah, would probably make most sense. It just was like, oh yeah, I guess we never quite heard about it anymore. But yeah, that would make most sense.
And there are still some planets in the deep core that like lean Imperial. They're just independent at this point.
Yeah. I mean that seems to make the most sense. It's just there now and not
isolated.
Fully, yeah, basically there's no real use in it, I guess. Yeah, because the new capital of the Empire is now a planet called Bastion. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, and Pelion makes a plan. He specifically wants to capitulate to Gorm Beliblis because he respects him like as a military leader, and he also believes that capitulating to him specifically, who's like a very, very proud general, very strong, would be less embarrassing for the Empire than, I don't know, capitulating to Admiral Akbar, let's say, which seems to make most sense. Like, okay, yeah, it looks better image-wise for them to capitulate to Beliblis. And yeah, there's this little conflict there with Dizra, who's going to be a lot more important. He basically thinks that all of this is like groveling to the New Republic. And yeah, and we have something that's also, it's a mystery. It was a mystery. It's like there's a ship class that the Empire now has, which is called the Sorrow Soup Prey Bird. It's a prototype of a ship that was discontinued. And yeah, and the thing is, there's kind of free reign to get ships on your own, and people won't like question you about this, but of course people are like, what, like, where have you gotten those? Because those are not supposed to exist anymore. They're discontinued. And yeah, and they just generally Dizra and Pelion have like, they have their ideological and psychological little spars, and like they have the whole etiquette thing going on, like, okay, how are you supposed to leave the room and when exactly, so it doesn't look like you're escaping from a conversation or something. And also specifically, they have their discussion about whether it's okay for them to use pirates as basically a part of their armed forces. It's like, okay, yeah, that's all believable. Pelion is a lot more invested into being an honorable man also, and not just being blindly focused on power like Dizra seems to be. So it's like, yeah, cool, I understand that. And what Dizra now wants to do is to actually still continue on with the fight and utilize the internal issues in the New Republic, which of course they always have. That's a meme for the New Republic. There's never been a time without internal issues. And partially he does that by sending out the Karmas information that he got from Lekjit, who's a spy for them. There you go. That's the connection back. And partially he wants to utilize the pirate crew of a character called Zothip, who has the prey birds for himself and attacks shipments, like caravans and something from the New Republic. And yeah, so it's like, okay, he wants to fight a bit dirtier. And there's still, so that's what we learn now, there's apparently still clones from Mount Tantus, if you very vaguely remember the Thrawn trilogy, that still exist. And they are partially with his partner called Flim. So we get introduced to another conspirator in the Empire now. We have Dizra and we have Flim. And Flim is going to be pretty central, because what he does is he basically has perfect blue makeup on. He has glowing red eye contacts, and he is basically a perfect Thrawn impersonator. That's going to be his thing. He's going to try and use Flim as a Thrawn impersonator to get the galaxy to be afraid again of, because the great Grand Admiral Thrawn, who almost defeated the New Republic, he's back now. He somehow survived, supposedly. And that's his plan. Utilize this. So we utilize Thrawn as a figure to to incite fear in the galaxy. We're going to use the pirates to attack the supply lines of the New Republic, and we're going to use the Kalamasi document to create even more internal fighting in the New Republic. It's basically like the 3-step plan, you could somewhat say. Like, yep, okay, sounds like the best you could do in your situation, so it makes sense. And he'll get help by another character who basically now forms a triumvirate with him and Flim, who is called Tears. And Tears used to be an Imperial Guard, then a Stormtrooper on the Chimera. And he specifically was in the squad that killed Rook being the rogue Nogri who killed the actual Thrawn back in the Thrawn trilogy. Okay, that's great. We have a character that's back. He's gonna be like the brains of the operation, the tactical mastermind. Flim is pretty much just a strawman. He's just standing there to speak and act like Thrawn. And Dizra is more or less like the political leader, military leader. He's supposed to be like the head of the operation still, even though now they form this rather unstable alliance. Exactly, yeah. That's all there is for now. Just a bunch of setup for a lot of conspiracy that's going to play out a bit later.
Here's a question: how do you feel about the twist being revealed this early?
You mean that Flim is?
Yeah, that it's fake Thrawn.
I don't think that's bad, because it's tough to say. If I imagine that the same would have happened, but there's actually there's something going on, and you actually question whether that could be Thrawn. I think it could be weird, because you so clearly see Thrawn die, but they also throw in these ideas of, maybe the Thrawn that died on the Chimera actually was a clone, and this is the real Thrawn now. So I think I don't mind it, but it would have been cool to explore how a Hand of Thrawn without the early reveal would be like. I don't know how do you feel about it?
I prefer it this way because you get to see all the intrigue between the three and see how their trust grows and shrinks. And
that's actually true, because you can say like
all three know everything, right? So.
Yeah, presumably, you're like, okay, all three seem to know everything, but sometimes you have this feeling of this character knows something or does something that he doesn't share with the group, and there's like secrecy, obviously. So I think the way you phrase it is pretty good. It seems like, you've closed one storytelling opportunity by immediately revealing it. You can't draw from the tension that could be there if you still play as though this is the real Thrawn, but it enables you to see all of this conspiracy going on behind their backs.
Behind the scenes,
yeah, because you wouldn't be able to see all of this if Thrawn was not revealed immediately to not be Thrawn, because of course if you see the same discussions going on, you would immediately see, oh yeah, this isn't Thrawn. But I think it's more interesting because now you're not afraid of this character like you were in the Thrawn trilogy. It's not like a repeat, but it's like, no, this is not what the story is about. It's pretty clear that this is fake. We want to focus more on the intrigue because, you couldn't have done the things with the three characters here with three Imperials if you wanted to pretend that this is the real Thrawn. So I think I agree with you there. Yeah, it's probably better this way, because otherwise it would feel too much like just, oh, we have Thrawn again, basically. But in the end, it's like, oh, no.
And then they have to like spend a chapter explaining every second of what happened and how...
You would have to get like an exposition dump to explain how all the characters got into this place that they're in now, whereas this is much more natural because you see it from the beginning, right? I assume towards the end as well. So I agree. It's probably the smarter decision to do it like this. Yeah. So chapter 5 now. We see Borsk failure now, of course. So slowly the Kalmas affair has been leaked to the public until now. Basically, everyone knows exactly. Okay, there's some Bothans who did this. They obviously never, because apparently, Borsk failure says, I think, that he doesn't know who did it. So of course nobody was ever brought to justice, and the public is out for blood because the Bothans have this interesting thing where they don't seem to have the best of reputations throughout the New Republic. Their military contributions are pretty well evened out by the fact that they are pretty dickish people, generally speaking. I blame Zahn. Of course, it's always Zahn's fault. If Zahn only would have read Young Jedi Knights before writing the Thrawn trilogy, so much more would have made sense in the EU. So that's obviously true. And we get with Borsk failure now, and he's surprisingly docile while speaking to Leia. He's very, he isn't as antagonizing and as combative as he usually is. He's like, okay, he understands immediately that this is serious and this can destroy all of the Bothans, basically, if this isn't played off correctly. So it's like, okay, no more time for being a quippy asshole. Now it's time to be nicer. And something I actually never wrote down, but it's pretty important to point out. Leia finally, thank fuck, isn't Chief of State. That's a big thing. Thank God. She's not Chief of State. It's so we have now Chief of State is somebody called Gavrisson. He's I don't remember the exact name of this species, but it's like a bird-like species, I think. And thank God. She's on a leave of absence. Yeah. Or basically, because it finally does what should have been, very central a long time ago, which is it gives Leia the possibility to be part of a story. Period, like nothing more. Because, the thing with Chief of State is that politics is going to be your main battleground. That can be really interesting, not for a character that is like in fighting age and in their prime. And especially it's going to be less interesting if the political battles that are fought by Leia are usually written like shit. So that's a very good idea. And yeah, you were absent when I talked about this. It's so good how Zahn made a point to very, very much emphasize how much the Force and like Jedi thinking is now a part of Leia's character. She always tries to use the Force to analyze things with the Force. She tries to think like a Jedi. She has a lightsaber. All of that is so fucking important because yes, this should have been her like for years now at this point, for over a decade at this point. And that it's only happening now is kind of insulting almost, but better late than never, I guess. And yes, so the Car Mass affair, because the Bothans like more or less collectively felt bad about this happening, is what initially brought them to the Rebel Alliance, which is actually pretty cool to find out. It's like out of a feeling of guilt, you could almost say, like even though of course not every Bothan has done anything, they still join the Rebel Alliance exactly for this, so that the Empire can't repeat their atrocities, and that they even started to become like one of the most dedicated species to join the Rebel Alliance and later the New Republic. So also pretty cool. But I have to say, I mean, even though it's Zahn writing them, so it feels as though okay, this is how Bothans are supposed to be. It's kind of hard to feel bad for them. For like, of course, not every Bothan, I know, but especially Borsk Failure, it's like I kind of struggle to feel bad for you. Sorry, you've had it coming for a long time. I haven't forgotten what you did to our poor boy, Mr. Darklighter. So yeah, that's something you had to expect at some point. It's gonna bite you in the ass how you used to act. And I mean, I don't expect that Borsk Failure was a part of the conspiracy that destroyed the Karmasi, but still, yeah. He's built himself a reputation, and now, even though you feel bad, it does sometimes feel kind of like, okay, you had it coming a bit. The Karmas catastrophe is happening during the story of Coruscant Knights 2. Oh, that's cool. So it's like very early on because I understand that Coruscant Knights is post Order 66. I'm not sure, but I think it is. So it's like very early on in the Empire. Yeah, makes sense, I guess. That's cool to know. So yeah, so what Dizra now does is he uses fake Thrawn, so Flynn, as a leader, of course, and he's sending ships to Botha-Wui, so the home planet of the Bothans. He himself has no authority to send anyone there, obviously. So Dizra is like he has like the control of one system, and he's basically free to operate in this system however he sees fit. But beyond that, he has no authority to do anything. So of course, the return of a very, very convincing Thrawn impersonator gives him the opportunity to act in the entire galaxy, because of course people would listen to Thrawn if he actually returned. A yearish after episode 3. Okay. Yeah, of course, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, then that's pretty cool. Good to know. Yeah. So exactly, he does that. Tears. What Tears does is he fakes. So basically, there's a file of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and this file also contains information about how his skin is supposed to look like. Which, okay, yeah.
Can you highlight Noah's most recent comment quickly? So Mark Thompson in the audiobook does that voice for Flim.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
So he probably knew. He probably figured it out too.
I mean, yeah, it's like I think he's an actor, isn't he, Flim? It's like, yeah. I mean, I can see that. It's pretty...
Yeah, he does.
It is pretty funny, actually. Yeah. Exactly. So the personal file of Thrawn has like a information about how his skin is supposed to look like, and probably like fingerprints as well. Makes sense. I mean, that sounds like something that would be in a very, very personal file. And so what he does is that Tears now uses this file. He basically fakes the skin of Thrawn. So when fake Thrawn has an eventual meetup with Nalgol, he's a Kuat and he's pretty important to the Empire. What he does is I think he has like a specific ring that makes it possible for him to just get a bit of skin out of Flim to, of course, check if this guy is the real Thrawn. Because and I like this question so much, because the character has been dead for over a decade at this point. I think like, or somewhere around a decade. And people should be very, very suspicious about it. And that's and because now he has the actual quote skin of Thrawn on him. When this character Nalgol checks on it, he's gonna find out that, okay, this is authentic, and will therefore believe that the actual Thrawn is returned. And it will eventually lead to everyone accepting the validity of Flim's claim to authority, which is okay. Yeah, that's smart, makes sense, and that he even thought about this being a possibility is also pretty cool. What Tears will now do as well is activate Thrawn's sleeper agents that he brought into the rebellion. And this made me question a bit, like, I was like, do they, like, if nothing ever happens, if they never get a response from anyone, are they just gonna sit there forever? I guess that's the I guess that's the reasoning behind sleeper agents. Like, if nothing ever happens, then nothing ever happens, and they are just there. I'm gonna stay there in perpetuity. And I also did ask myself, like, how is it that nobody ever thought about them? I guess that's also some information that was in some secret Thrawn personal file that only Tears, like being a former Imperial Guard, could even access. It's like, I would imagine people would try to get access to everything that Thrawn had in his file anyway, like, because he's so important. But I guess
we'll get there.
Okay, then never mind. And there you go. So we know that there are sleeper agents all around. We're even gonna get very, very briefly introduced to some. But they are there, and they're gonna get reactivated now and fulfill whatever purpose they have. So we have that, and we have some setup of conflict. It's always good between specifically Palion and the triumvirate of Tears, Flim, and Dizra. And inside the triumvirate itself, there's also a bunch of conflict that's already set up. Tears, he's very independent, he's very efficient. That means that he sometimes does things he doesn't want Dizra to know about at all, or at least during the time where he's doing it, and that's gonna sometimes create a rift between them. So I haven't reached the place where that fully plays out, but the seeds for conflict have already been sown. And also in between Dizra and Zothip. So Zothip being the leader of a pirate group who basically works for Dizra. He's on his payroll, more or less, and there's more conflict to come with them as well. And there's going to be explanations like, oh, you shouldn't act this or that way, because if you do, this might happen. And it's just nice to see, okay, you can clearly see that there can be something happening and what the ramifications of that would be. But you don't know yet whether something will. I assume something will happen, but we're going to wait and see. Chapter 6. So what we learn about the New Republic is that essentially, and that's going to be part of their problem now as well, they have become much more federalistic than they used to be. I'm like, my first impression of that is, it's pretty good to do that, because the Senate has sort of demonstrated its utter incompetence and its tendencies to want to self-delete their entire faction for like at least 10 books at this point, if not more. So it's like, yeah, makes sense. And I mean, obviously, yeah, if local people take care of their local conflicts, that's more effective than some people light years away. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We have sort of a side plot going on here. We have Lando, Tycho, Wes Jensen, and also Wedge, who go to a cave dweller. So they are on a planet called Morishim, who apparently spreads the truth about karmas. So they're like, okay, we're going to check out what this thing is. And they go to his cave, and apparently in this cave, there's an old Imperial communication center. So it's like something by Imperial intelligence that has been left behind on this cave, because, I mean, it's a cave in the middle of nowhere, so they just assumed nobody's ever going to find this. Or if they are, it's not going to be relevant anymore. But I mean, somebody did find it, and it has become pretty relevant because that's where he learned more about karmas, and that's at least how these characters hear about it for the first time. So it's like, they probably should have destroyed this thing. I don't remember if there's ever a reasoning given why it wasn't. It's just, it was there, and nobody ever imagined that it would be important anymore. And I guess they had to quickly retreat from their planet at some point, so maybe they didn't have the time. Like, okay, I mean, that's just a thing that happens here. Exactly. And oh yeah, I think Lando specifically, it was hidden behind like very convincing, I think it was like curtains or some form of camouflage. And I think Lando was the one to find it because of the smell of very old electronics, which was kind of funny. I think that was the explicit reasoning he gave. And yeah, Tears is even aware of its existence on that planet, which also gave me this impression of, okay, perhaps somebody should have quickly gone there and destroyed it. But yeah, and something's happening. An Imperial Star Destroyer attacks them, and they have a frigate there with them, but that one can't help them because it was shut off even further than just being in standby, and that's the reason why this thing can never launch. Like, that sounds kind of weird, to be honest. And yeah, so they attack the Imperial Star Destroyer. So, and Lando has something which he uses. It's like very, very expensive gear, and it sends a bunch of sequences like of information to the Imperial Star Destroyer, which is right now, weirdly enough, that's just what you learn now. There's an Imperial corvette there, which is getting abducted by the Imperial Star Destroyer. So, like in the first second, it looks kind of weird. And what Lando does is he uses this gear, he bombards the Star Destroyer with a bunch of sequences. It floods their decoding mechanisms because the corvette is like trying to send them a message, but they can't communicate with it. So that's how they think, like, okay, if we flood their decoding thing so much, maybe it's gonna create at least a few breaks in their communication control, that maybe something is gonna come through to us. And there actually is. There's a few tidbits of information. And what little they do get is immediately sent to Garnbill Leapless. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Because as far as I remember, this was the corvette that was sent out to offer peace agreement by Pelion. And of course, the other Imperials, specifically Dizra, doesn't want that to happen, so it's immediately abducted. And it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's pretty cool technology to, like, we're flooding your systems with so much that they are preoccupied with that, and maybe that gives us a little window in which we can get some information from the corvette that you're trying to steal right now. Like, okay, it's pretty tangible as a mechanism, so that was pretty cool. And Pelion is on a planet that I didn't even think that existed, but I guess it was previously already mentioned at some point, which is Munilinst. that's kind of cool that it's here. And what he does is he immediately reveals that Imperials that he doesn't seem to know yet who exactly, they're funding pirates, and they're even probably using sleeper agents or even regular troops to like shore up the ranks of the pirates. And he suspects that one of the Imperials, who's called Kite, is involved in this, because he's like the only one who reacted visibly when he revealed that information. And what Palion's plan is, like, he hopes that him knowing this stuff makes Kite so like panics so much that it will inevitably lead the Imperial intelligence to, first of all, him, and then also his co-conspirators. Like, yeah, he's some little dude. It makes sense for Palion to try and get him to make a mistake. Yeah, that's cool. Just mention. I wonder if, because I don't remember too much about the Thrawn trilogy anymore. It's been quite a while, I have to admit. So I do wonder if this was the first mention of Munilens or if something before that, because I feel like I would have remembered if there was a an earlier mention of it, but
it's the first appearance.
It's the first appearance. Okay.
But he should have read Plagueis first anyway, before writing this book.
Yeah. So imagine that. That would have been. Yeah, you won't understand Specter of the Past without having read Plagueis, so you should definitely do that. Yeah, okay, I'm looking right now on Wikipedia. It also says Specter of the Past first appearance. There you go. That's actually pretty cool. It's just this teeny tiny little planet, and it there you go. We got so much out of it. Yeah, it is indeed. We both checked. That's pretty cool, actually. And yeah, so that's Palion's plan. It's like, make this guy panic, and Imperial intelligence will take care of it. Okay, makes sense. And Bel Iblis, he now is left with the bit of information that they've got. And Vermel, so Vermel was one of Palion's men who was on the Imperial corvette and who tried to send the information to Bel Iblis. He doesn't believe that whoever that was tried to desert to the New Republic. Because it's like they chose to use a Corellian corvette specifically, and it's like, if you want to try and desert, you're probably going to use something that's faster and armed better. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's like they aren't deserters, so they had some other purpose, and it also obviously doesn't seem like their purpose was an attack. So they wonder, like, what's this gonna be? And that's also gonna be, it's very slowly gonna be built up how I assume eventually Palion and Bel Iblis will meet. That's kind of the implication, that at some point it will happen, but it's gonna be very, very slowly built up and built towards. So, Chapter 7, Bothans. So, because of all the developments surrounding the Karmas document, Bothans are now basically under general suspicion to have been involved in the catastrophe. So, I mean, that's obviously incorrect, but it's like, yeah, Bothans are their thing, so that's kind of they are very unpopular because, yeah, people turn on them very, very quickly. But yeah, that conflict, it's gonna turn out somewhat interesting, and we're gonna talk about the execution there, so we'll just let that stay for now. The Senate keeps losing power, which is moved to the sectors and the systems of the New Republic. It's like, that's probably pretty good, actually, because that Senate, man, it's a very weird Senate, and we're gonna especially see that now as well. But then again, it's not like the systems and the sectors that are doing their own thing are gonna be that much better anyway as well. So we'll see what happens with that. The Senate is worrying about Imperial and agents who could still be alive on Bothawi, or like in the New Republic in general, and it makes perfect sense to be afraid of that. And then I think back to like the New Rebellion, where the whole point was like, oh, we're gonna we're gonna get all these fucking Imperials back into our government because that's not gonna cause any problems. Like, oh yeah, well there you go. Makes sense to worry about that now, I guess. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So Han, we're back with Han very briefly. He's returning a message that it makes Leia's heart beat. That's just what we get. And she's dismayed specifically that the Ashori senator and the two Karmas interrupt her. But so she's interrupted by these people who want to talk to her privately, and she broadcasts that to the room where she wanted to meet up with Han, so that Han himself can record it. It's like, just the fact that her heart rate increased when she heard of Han. It's like, oh yeah, these two are a romantic couple. That's weird. It's good to find it of that sometimes.
Remember that?
I remember when they were in love. I saw the movies. That was the thing that happened. Yeah, that was something. How disrespectful of Zahn to not have read the Jedi Academy trilogy before writing his books, where he clearly could see that they hate each other and that Leia accuses him of fucking cheating on her or whatever. Yeah. Han and Leia in love. That's actually pretty nice. That's kind of what we liked in the movies, and you never needed to change that. Thanks. Exactly. So, Talon Card calls in with Han, and he gets Han basically caught up to what's happening surrounding the Karmas affair, and he also asks Han like, how's Luke doing, because Talon tells him that like, yeah, Mara has been kind of weird since being on Wayland, like in the beginning of the book, and Han adds like, yeah, Luke's been kind of acting weird as well. that whole thing is just kind of funny because it has
everyone knows except them.
It's exactly that. It's hilarious because it also points out like, yeah, these two characters really sucked for a long time. I'm sorry. And it's like, yeah, come on guys, we all know, stop with this charade, just do whatever it is you need to do and get it on already. But yeah, so it's pretty fun to see that. Another crazy thing, because we just talked about Leia and Han, they do something pretty obscene, I have to say. They flirt and they seem like a normal romantic couple. Like, yeah, Jesus Christ, Zahn sucks at romance so much. That's so obvious from me that for the fact that a married couple is now flirting for the first time in what feels like 20 books, probably. It's like, I'm sorry. I mean, sure, I don't expect Romeo and Juliet levels of romance from Mara and Luke in Vision of the Future. Sure, whatever. That's all fine by me. But to single this guy out as being horrible at romance, sometimes it feels like a meme to me, and I find it hard to take that serious. So it's like, yeah, I mean, he made a married couple flirt, and all of you made them be at the brink of divorce for like a few books at least, and just be like casual conversation partners in all the other books. So I like this more, and if you think this sucks, oh well. I blame Zahn for all the good writing in Star Wars. Fuck him. He's as sterile as standing as filthy. I mean, if that's the alternative to everything else I've been reading mostly, I'll take sterile. Like if this is sterile, then I like sterile. That's fine. I'm happy with sterile, I guess. There you go. And more meta commentary. And this meta commentary was very satisfying to me because that character still occupies place 1 on my most hated character list. So Nalgol, the Quat, who we learned about, he has a fantastic quote. He says, quote, "He wondered how he let incompetent fools with delusions of grandeur like Darla waste the Empire's resources for years without achieving anything." Like, yeah, that good question. I don't know. she gassed a bunch of people, and everyone thought it was cool when, sorry, it kind of wasn't. It was actually pretty shit. But yeah, there you go, Dala. Dala gets what she deserves. We don't even know what's happening to her right now, because of course you would assume that this character never returns. So thank God Dala never returned, am I right? Oh, yeah. There you go. Perfect commentary. I've nothing to add to this. This is exactly what I want. Chapter 8. Luke infiltrates a faction called the Cavrillo Pirates.
Cavrillo,
yep. He has a pretty good, like, a fake look, like a costume. Because of course you wonder, like, why the hell would Luke need a costume? Because to aliens, humans look all the same, so of course nobody would know who Luke is. Of course, we remember Morph Duel didn't know who Luke is, so it kind of feels weird for Zahn to break continuity like that. I don't know why he would do that, but apparently people can distinguish between human beings, especially if they're like galactic white heroes or enemies. That's
weird. That's weird, honestly.
That's kind of crazy. Because, yeah, crazy thought. When I see Michael Jordan and I see Barack Obama, I can actually distinguish who is who. That's a thing that exists, you know. So I don't know
what all the members of BTS.
Okay, fair point. Then I give up. But yeah, there you go. They do look different. So Luke is kind of a very unique human being who should be probably seen and be recognized everywhere. So that's good that that's specified. Luke names himself Mencio, and he pretends to be a cargo pilot for a guy called Wesselmann, or Wesselmann, which is just kind of, it's a funny sounding German name. It sounds like a mid 20th century German, I have to admit, so that's kind of hilarious. And he just, he tries to make like a case of why he's supposed to be let through, like, oh yeah, we've never heard of you, and he's like, yeah, but blah blah blah. He has a bunch of inside information that he knows that gives the impression that he's a legit guy. So that was pretty good. So he was asked by someone else with a bluff, the other guy bluffed, and somebody from the New Republic intelligence, also subtle jab, yeah, the New Republic has a secret service that can be useful. That's a thing. They've basically pulled this guy that they are talking about out of the equation, and got the information of the official place that he was supposed to go to Luke, and he got all the a bunch of relevant just information that helps him in dialogue, so he can pretend that he is supposed to be here and they believe him. Therefore, so, hey, cool, there's just a like a paragraph or something that's used to specify why is Luke able to infiltrate this place, why isn't he immediately found out. And there you go. Like, you don't need a lot of information to justify where things is happening, where things are happening in your book. Just a bit. Like, that's totally fine, and that's pretty cool. It's always good when you see, okay, this was something that was taken seriously, and there was justification given, and now you understand why things are happening the way they are. That's always good. Yeah. So what Luke does is he hides in the box, so he says, like, yeah, we have like an additional present for you. It's like a droid, and in the box where the droid is supposed to be, he hides in there. He had, like, what Luke also did previously is he had something to eat before, and he used the Force to put the plate in a very specific place, because people suspect, like, wait, what's with this weird box here, and that guy is just gone now. People were even asking, like, is he in this box? But then they said, like, no, this plate that's like right here, he couldn't have moved from there into this box that quickly. It's like it reads kind of bizarrely, like this little interaction that's just going on there. But it's like, hey, yeah, Luke thought about this. People would probably believe that he's in there. So maybe he should give himself just a little bit of alibi on why he wouldn't be in there. But he's still like, yeah, that plan was basically his best bet. There was no other way to go in there without without military force, and that would have made everyone escape. But still, it's a plan that actually fails. And I feel like this is the way that you write a plan that fails. It's like you see the information given to you. You can recognize, okay, this is probably the best he could have done in this moment, without like infiltrating the faction and being there for weeks or something until people believe that he's a legit guy. No, he needed to go there now. That's his best bet. And it fails. It's like, yeah, he did a smart thing. They were smarter. They realized that something was going on, and they found out that he was a fake. Like, yeah, that's good. That's the way you write this thing. And yeah, so that happens. He draws his lightsaber even, and immediately everyone recognizes, oh fuck, that's Luke Skywalker. Like, yeah, that sounds like something people would recognize, a lightsaber. It doesn't seem like too many Jedi are just running around with their lightsaber all day, and he's been doing this for like the longest time now, at least at least to the people who like follow the happenings in the galaxy. So that makes perfect sense. What happens to Luke now is that he gets caught in basically like in a gravitational trap. It has a bunch of stakes in there which restrain him and even restrains his lightsaber. And there's like a voice from the control room or something that's pretty annoying. Like, he's like an annoying prick, keeps provoking him like, oh yeah, you really would like to take your lightsaber now. Oh, look at us, we caught you now. And I mean, yeah, he's a pirate, that's what you expect. He gloats about the construction of the place. I was like, you could have probably killed him immediately, because this seems to be like it's your goal anyway. I'm not sure if the goal was to capture him, but it seemed like they wanted to kill him rather. So there you go. And what Luke does is he actually manages to escape, because in his pocket he basically has a bunch of blaster magazines. And what he does is he throws them. He makes them explode with activating his lightsaber in the right moment, so they hit the magazine and make it explode. That way, his lightsaber is freed up. He gets to cut around and escape. He then gets contacted by a character that, by the way, still exists and can have contact with Luke, which is Mara Jade. And
Who's
he's
that?
pretty. I don't know. I've heard okay. She has a smuggling business.
And I know she's Lando's ex-girlfriend. I know that for sure.
Exactly. I mean, the first appearance of Mara Jade, of course, was Dark Apprentice. We all know that. So that's where her character starts. Yeah. Look, Telling Card is interesting as like smuggling boss or Booster Tariq, because there's more to them than just this is their business. It's like, that there's stuff happening. There's a story there. They're interesting as smugglers. That this seems like their world. Mara Jade with her own smuggling enterprise. That sounds like the most boring fucking shit I've ever heard in my life, and I never want to read about Mara Jade's smuggling business, because like, if you see that this character has so much more to offer, and she's wasted for basically she's fridged. But like, oh, she has a smuggling business. Wink, wink. She has something to do that isn't useless. Apparently,
off screen,
yeah. It's like if you remember that Thrawn exists. He's like, imagine he survives the Thrawn trilogy, and then he's just, I don't know, a cargo pilot or something. It's like, you want me to like this character, like a character that's obviously made for so much more and is wasted in the position that he's in.
Supposed to be a Jedi.
Yeah, please. Like, look, we've had this conversation 20 times. Do I believe that at the end of The Last Command, Zahn wanted a Luke Mara romance to happen? No, I don't. And I never did, really. But it was very clear that some connection was supposed to happen there, because you're not justified in making, like, if you say like, oh yeah, he wanted you never wanted them to be a romance, so why do you care? Okay, that's fair. But they had like no contact at all for a decade. That clearly goes against anything that's been set up. And yeah, if Zahn messes around with this and more or less subtly insults people for not making anything happen with this character, I'm not talking about a romantic connection, I mean anything with her, yeah, he's kind of justified, because if someone's justified, then it's kind of the guy who did it first. So, sorry, that's his character. He created her in a way and she's supposed to interact with the world in a specific way as the book ends, because the book very clearly sets her on this path, and there's really nothing that should stop her. But yeah, there you go. Mara Jade and Luke, they can actually interact and not either hate each other or be cold as fuck. So that's cool. And yeah, and Luke, another crazy thing, Luke is happy to hear from Mara Jade. And she's like, oh, need me to save you from trouble again, and he's joking like, I'm never in trouble. Like, hey, that's fun. I can't believe it. What the fuck am I reading? This can't be Star Wars. Cool. Characters interact in the way that you expect. That's Jesus. And I was like, yeah, this chapter, it bent logic for me a few times, but the character work, in my opinion, was really strong here. I liked what was done with the characters. Mostly, of course, with Luke. This was a very Luke-focused chapter, but also this little thing just that happened with Mara as well. Chapter 9 now. Luke and Mara, they have like a bit of banter there. Hey, that can happen as well. That's great. But at some point he realizes, yeah, okay, you kind of do have to rescue me. I'm kind of fucked right now. And she insults him, like, somewhat interestingly, which is like, oh, this is your last chance to solve everything with a wave of your hand. And like, this sounds to me, because this isn't really addressed in this book anymore, so it sounds like set up for later conflict between the characters, obviously probably in Vision of the Future. So this just kind of stands on its own for now. But we kind of see a through line with what people think about Luke, because in the beginning, the people on Feigen, they also mentioned this, like, yeah, this guy's too powerful and he kind of scares us, and that seems to be like in the same vein. So there you go. We have that for now. What Luke does is he basically, because Luke now needs to go away. It's like a space station where pirates are. He infiltrated them there, and now he's there, and he has really no means of escaping. And he can't get his ship to start quickly enough to leave the station that's now in the process of destroying itself. So what he needs to do now is he launches himself into the vacuum, while he also gets pulled by a tractor beam towards the starry eyes. So that's the ship that Mara Jade is on. And and then I wonder, because of course this scene reads not quite, but it reads somewhat comparatively to the Leia scene from The Last Jedi, where she flies through the vacuum. And it's like,
the difference being that Luke's in a trance and she's perfectly conscious, and
she's there. She's just doing her thing. So exactly, yeah, Luke is like in a total trance, and he gets pulled out. He's very quickly in the starry eyes, so that happens very quickly. And I'm like, I can very much believe that he survives the lack of oxygen in the vacuum. That is no problem to me. I wasn't sure about, because of course there would be pressure in space, and that would be what actually kills him first. So I'm like, I don't know if I believe that he survives the pressure. I think with the trance thing, I can believe it enough that I don't question it anymore. But yeah, I mean, he's pretty useless in that trance. He can't do anything except be a sitting duck. So that's also a good enough, like, trade-off for me, whereas Leia actually just moved on her own volition, fully conscious, basically. So that there is a quite significant difference there, where I would say, okay, there was enough to justify that he does survive it. Maybe it's still a bit too much for me, just concept-wise, because like, regardless of the reason, I think just concept-wise, I don't like the idea a whole much, but I like that it's been expanded upon where so much that you can say, okay, that's believable enough, and
there's at least some reasons as to why it could possibly work.
Exactly, yeah, and I commend them for that, and I think it's been done well enough that I can accept the reasoning and just let it go. So yeah, there you go. What Mara Jade does, of course, she needs to get him to land in the ship, but of course, at some point he needs to lose his velocity, because he's just gonna get splashed on the other side of the ship interior if he keeps on with his speed. And what she does is, she uses the Force, and I love it. Was just a little mention, but I loved that it was there. She was strengthened by his techniques that she kept practicing over the years. It's like, thank God she did something that isn't a complete waste of time in those years. So that's something, at least. Of course, it's a retcon, but thank God. So that's good. And she even jumps in his way, like in his trajectory, so that he doesn't just get yeeted against the wall. And that was pretty cool. And of course, like he fully lands on her. And they even have this like this anime embarrassment scene where Luke's like on top of her because he landed on her, and she's like, "You're gonna get up from me" or something, and he's like embarrassed and gets red. Like, oh, there you go, having a moment there. That's cool. So that was pretty nice. That's how he gets saved. Oh yeah, we have a little jab against the Black Fleet Crisis, which was interesting. The Keller ship, this living sort of organism ship that we had in the Black Fleet Crisis, gets called useless, just like that. I think it gets called useless even a second time somewhere. I don't think I've written that down, which was just kind of funny. It's like, this is maybe not the thing I would have chosen from the Black Fleet Crisis to make fun of, but I mean, at this point he probably doesn't care. Keller, what the fuck am I supposed to call it? Keller. Like, it's with a Q. Sorry, Mr. German man. Exactly. So what Luke and Mara then do is escape from the abandoned and now detonating pirate station. They have an encounter. That's also just set up. They have an encounter with a very, very strange looking ship. Like, they look at it, and I think they see it. It looks somewhat similar to a TIE fighter, but like nothing else really. It's strange. They've never seen it before, and that's just set up. We just know, okay, there's a thing that exists, and it seems to know where Luke's at, and also, of course, where Mara is at, and that's gonna be more important later. Queller, I don't know, the ship from Black Fleet Crisis, the living ship. Nico, how do you pronounce it? Like,
I don't even remember. It was a thing.
It's Quella. That's like I think that was the species that produced this ship. Like, I would call it Keller or something. I don't know.
I don't know how else you would pronounce it.
Yeah, he wants to tell me like the German pronunciation where it's always Q and a U, but no, Noah, that's not. I don't think that's correct. Like, you would have to anglicize it or something, like pronounce it in English. Basically, it's like this sounds more natural to me, Keller. So yeah, exactly, and yeah. So we have that weird ship. No more context. That's just set up for later. One of Mara's colleagues on the Story Eyes even comments on, "Oh man, you make a really great team," and it's like, yeah, literally every fucking one and their mama knows that there's something there. Only these two characters don't. It's like, there you go. That's great. And yeah, and he leaves for the New Republic again, and she goes her own merry way. And this might have been my favorite chapter from the book. I'm gonna have to see if there's another chapter that I liked more now when we talk about it. Yeah, that's fair. I do call that the German way, but it's like Chornacht sounds more intuitive to me than Chornacht. I don't know. That's just a me thing. I understand what you mean, but I think Keller, like, because this pronunciation, like Quelle, the thing that makes it like a V is the U that's in there. Like jellyfish, also Qualle. So I don't think even from a German perspective this would necessarily be true, because I mean we never write a word that's just a Q. It's always Q.
We don't
and
either.
a U. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So it's like, okay, the U in German is what makes it into a Qw sound, like as though it's just Q a KW, like Quelle or Qualle. But without that U, I don't see the reason to pronounce it that way. So Chornacht sounds much more correct to me as a pronunciation than Quella or something. So yeah, that's just me. But yeah, I think chapter 9 is my favorite chapter because it has what I want the most at this point. It's just let these fucking characters do something with each other. I don't care. Like, let them interact and not be fucking horrendous. That's what I always wanted, basically, since the end of The Last Command. And hey, this book duology is giving it to me, so that's great. So chapter 10. So now people are starting to give the Bothans a bunch of requirements on what they need to do to more or less be forgiven. One of those is to find a planet and basically perfectly recreate the living conditions on Kaamas, to end the conflict that's been happening. The stuff that has been happening now is that agitators are inciting riots all around, like all around like facilities of Bothans. They're controlled by Bothans or on Bothawi itself. And the Bothans, though, they are kind of now for the first time sharing that their economy is kind of in the gutter, and they have been forging like their documents and their balances for a while now, because that's the thing. Like Gaversom, Leia, and Borskveli, I think, have a discussion about this, and he's like Gaverson's like, I've seen your balances. Like, you don't have the greatest finances, but you could afford this. It's like, yeah, we kind of don't have any money. It's like, oh yeah, that's pretty scary. And so what happens now is basically Gaverson is trying to he's gonna try to play on time. It's like he's like, how long do you need to recover from this so that you could, in theory, buy a whole planet and like terraform a whole planet for the Kalmasi? And it's like, I think it's a few months that he says that he needs, and Garrison is gonna try to give them a bit of time, but it's gonna be very difficult. Tears will go. What Tears is gonna do now is he goes to a place called Yaga Minor. So
Minor. Yaga Minor.
Yeah. Minor's what we Yaga Minor. To delete what still is in there, like information wise about the Bothan spies that actually did cooperate with the Empire to create the massacre of the Kalamasi, and also something else that we don't know yet. So he also deleted something else. I don't know the information base that is on Yaga Minor. What's the English name for it? I only know the German name. Do you remember by any chance?
I'm
gonna look because I'm not sure. Don't remember.
Do you have it written down anywhere?
No, there's only the German name. Because wait, I'm gonna just very quickly look it up whether it says. Wait, is it this one? No, no, that's something else. Blah 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 blah. Wait, Imperial Remnant. It doesn't say what's the. It has a very specific, like it has a specific base or something, like an archive, and the German name is Allgegenwärtigkeit. That means like, wait, Allgegenwärtigkeit. Yeah, allgegenwärtig means like omnipresence or ubiquitous or something. I think ubiquiterate. I get
ubiquiterate.
Ubiquiterate. Okay, that's like, so the ubiquiterate is like a grand, like one of the biggest imperial archives. I think there's one on Bastion and one on Yaga Minor, and the one on Yaga Minor is called the ubiquiterate. That's like, it's a bunch of information on all sorts of stuff, including the Karamasi affair. Of course, it's under the control of the Empire, so they never let anything about this out. And what Tears now does is he deletes the information on the actual spies amongst the Bothans, and also something we don't know yet. So, yeah, that's just that. Okay, and you clearly see, because Tears, he's so self, he's acting on his own. He doesn't necessarily wait to get permission. That's not the way that he's gonna act. He's pretty open about that, and you can clearly see that there's more tension rising up there, which is cool. Oh yeah, there's a phrase that was kind of funny to see. I think Zahn was the one who started this thing where you change real world words into Star Wars equivalents, like the bathroom being the refresher and something, and coffee being kef and something. And now we learned that there's actually an equivalent for like go to the devil or like go to hell or something, which is go to Vader. I don't know, it was just kind of, it was a bit weird, but it's like, I guess that would be the equivalent, because
some of that
no
would
devil.
Start leaking into normal conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to imagine that, but yeah.
In Young Jedi Knights, we get Emperor's backbones. I like that one.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's like, yeah, in what do you do in a universe where no devil in this kind of way exists? I guess that makes sense that that Vader would be or the Emperor would be the placeholders for like the devil in this. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of funny that he thought about putting that in there instead of just saying go to hell or something. Yeah, and there you go. And what's very interesting for me as well, and I don't know if this is ultimately going to be the demise of the villains, but you very clearly can see all the points in the plot which could eventually deteriorate the villain situation. So there's massive distrust between the people of the Triumvirate, specifically really between Dizra and Tears. You also have the problem with Zothrip, which is just going to get worse and worse the more they have to work together. And he felt like, the Empire left us to die against Luke, basically, because, he's of the Cavrillo pirates, so Luke just wiped out one of them, or like the most important base of the pirates. So yeah, he feels like he's been left alone, and he's gonna feel that even more at the end of the book. And it's like, oh, you can clearly see there's threats formed already, like, hey, the fuck are you doing? We need you or something. And it's satisfying to see that, because even if it doesn't end up happening, it's like, okay, you see all these points which could eventually lead to the downfall of the villains. Like, at some point, just everything is going to crumble, because all these little things kept building up, and then at the end, everything escalates. So I'm going to have to wait and see whether that's how it evolves. I believe it does. It may not. But yeah, so far, it looks pretty cool, actually. So yeah, and specifically Luke's knowledge of what's going on, basically, and his abilities are also specifically getting dismissed and like underplayed. It's like, yeah, whatever, he won't find out anything. It's like, oh, okay, that's probably one of these things as well. Luke's gonna be in some way, there's gonna happen something of relevancy with Luke that will probably prove them wrong at the end, but we'll see. Yeah. Oh yeah, Zothrip has like a quick line, like he has a quick callback to the original trilogy, where Dizra is like, yeah, just keep going here with us, and you're gonna get a lot of money. Like, or no, it's like you're gonna get more money than you can imagine. And he's like, I can imagine a lot. Like, oh, okay. The callback to Han on the Death Star. It's like a bit cheesy perhaps, but this is the kind of non-intrusive way of making a little cameo line from the movies that doesn't feel horribly out of place. So good on him. That didn't suck too much. And yeah, what Zothrop now does is he got hired to attack Pelion at a place called Pesitin, specifically under Corellian insignia, so that Pelion is led to believe that Garmbel Iblis has received his peace offering and rejects it because he just attacks him instead. And I feel like this makes perfect sense as a plan, but also you could see it in here if you think about it, and if you don't, you're going to see it at the end of the book, that there's also kind of like a gaps in the logic of the villains here, with stuff that they wouldn't necessarily factor in, but which will lead Pelion to immediately dismiss this as being something that Garmbel Iblis did. You're going to see what at the end of the book. So that
Pelion's the
best. Pelion is great, and Pelion is a very interesting case because, let's say, Thrawn. I like Thrawn a lot, but still, I did want Thrawn to not succeed because he's not the hero of the story. But with Pelion, it's really this interesting thing where you don't necessarily want him to lose because he doesn't, like, he actually isn't a horrible guy. He's a hardworking dude. He loves the Empire. He truly believes in the positive ideals that the Empire has, and he is an honorable guy. He's not a scumbag. Yeah, Pelion is a great man. It's a pretty cool character to follow, and it's good that a sizable part of the books focus on him because there's a lot of stuff that you can tell from his perspective. Exactly. So, chapter 11. So, Talon now goes to the ship of Booster Tarek, and he meets with Corran, Mirax, and also their by now 6-year-old child called Valen. And this just made me remember, like, Jesus, yeah, it's been 6 years since they married and at some point then had their child. Oh fuck, it's been a while, really. Was kind of crazy to just see that, because like with the solo kids, they were always mentioned, at least in the books, of course, because they were the children of the main protagonists, at least 2 of them. But yeah, with Valen Horn, that didn't happen, of course, because Corran is a character from later books. So it's like, oh yeah, it's been quite a while there. There you go. Oh yeah. More meta commentary from Zahn, which is always great. It's through Talon this time towards Corran, where Talon says, like, it's pretty irresponsible of the New Republic to let you go on missions with your whole family. Like, yeah, that actually is pretty irresponsible. You shouldn't do that. So thank God nobody ever does that, right? Oh, yeah, exactly. So Talon's he knows apparently what toys Valen's specific. Well, I should probably say Card. So Card knows what toys Valen wants to play with, and I wonder, like, only Corran bothered to ask, like, wait, how the fuck do you know what toys my child likes to play with? I'm like, it was an interesting conversation because, yeah, Talon is supposed to be the guy that knows everything, but nobody ever really finds out how exactly. It's just, I have information network. I'm an information broker.
Many grapevines.
Yeah. That's Talon's thing. It's like, oh, I guess you know what toys this child wants to play with. I mean, whatever. I guess, yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll probably just talk to Booster, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's fair. That might be a thing too. Talk to Booster. Booster doesn't seem like he would hide that fact from him. So yeah, that makes sense. We get more commentary that to me felt like meta commentary, but I could read too much into it. Which was Talon also saying, the New Republic always points to the Empire if something goes wrong with them, like specifically now in connection to the Kalmasti documents, which to me correctly implies that the New Republic is kind of trash and responsible for its own problems, at least a lot if not every time. Like, yeah, the Empire hasn't been that big of a factor for quite a while now, so maybe start looking at the man in the mirror instead
How many
of the
years
Empire.
ago was Darksaber? Darksaber is 12 ABY, and this book is 19 ABY. So,
Jesus, yeah, it's been a while since the Imperials were satisfactory as a as the one that you can blame for everything. Like, at some point, the New Republic has to kind of recognize, oh wait, we're actually the dominant faction in the galaxy, and maybe it's just our fault. Yeah, and if you've read the Bantam era, you know that it's the New Republic's fault basically all the time. So yeah, exactly. So one of the prey birds. So there was a prey bird that was hanging around. I think it was hanging around at Luke's ship, but I'm not sure. It might have just been. I think it actually wasn't, because the prey birds are like from the Paleon, or like the Dizra faction. So there was a prey bird that also flies now to Booster's ship. So it sends something to them, and it immediately flies off again. So there's no fighting happening. That's just it. And I did wonder, like, because there was this mention that that for some reason Booster's shields weren't activating. Like, I guess that's just a thing. It's like it always works until it's not supposed to. I mean, nothing happened. That's also a thing. So this didn't have any negative repercussions, but it was just weird scene to me. But yeah, that's it really. So they just sent them something, and yeah, that's it. And Mara, Mara mentions that she couldn't believe that Thrawn had a hand of Thrawn, or like something called a hand of Thrawn, because he had the Nogri. But I'm like, I mean, during the Galactic Civil War, Vader actually had the Nogri and not Thrawn. So because she was in the Empire during the Galactic Civil War, I would imagine she would know that there was a time where Thrawn didn't have the Nogri, and so he's like, okay, maybe there was something in this time that I don't know of. Like, okay, whatever. It's just this little piece of information that she throws out there. Oh yeah, something from I forgot that in the last chapter. It was in the last chapter. And I wrote it down here. Is that Gent? Remember Gent? He is a character that existed. He's an officer who specifically focuses on decoding in the New Republic, in the ranks of the New Republic. It's great. He was. I mean, he's not the most important character, but it's like, oh yeah, he's a cool guy. He's kind of neat. He does things. He had his little cameo, I guess you can call it, in Champions of the Force, but there you go. He's a big boy now. Cool. Yeah, and I do like, so what I have to say, I do like that Corran is pretty cold towards Talon-Karrde, because I do like Talon-Karrde a whole lot as a character, but he can be, like, he can really be a dick as a person, and he sometimes seems to get off on his ability to collect information and even scaring people sometimes with it. Like, yeah, I know stuff. I can know everything. And people should naturally, I feel like, be a bit more aversive to him as a, like, just because that's a part of his character, even though he's a charming guy. I mean, that's also his thing.
He's a smuggler. Charming is part of the job.
Charming, yeah. He has this thing. He's a very social being. But yeah, he's also very suspicious at times. So it's like, it's entirely believable that at least some character, and I guess if it's some character, it would be Corran, would be a bit more generally suspicious towards him, even though Talon-Karrde is a great guy. Yeah, it's like, okay, makes sense. It's good that there is somebody, I feel like, that isn't just a big fan of him in the universe. I mean, so that's good. Chapter 12. So we get introduced to two characters, which won't play a big role for now in Specter of the Past. One of them is called Karoli, and the other one is called Shader. They apparently are like part of a secret assassin cult. And yeah, Shader doesn't wish to be part of that cult anymore. and Karoli, the other one, plans to kill her current boss, which is a smuggler called Mazik, and she tries to to foil her plans before she manages to do so. And that whole it was a pretty long interaction, so that whole part was entertaining enough, but I was like, I have no clue how this ties into anything yet. I mean, towards the end you get more of an idea, because then she starts to be a part of the general plot line, let's say. But in this moment, it's just like, okay, why exactly are you here? I don't see the connection to anything. She's there. We don't know yet, but that's it for now. Yeah. Okay, we get another pretty nice quote here from, I think that was just a narrator. Quote, all this has brought Luke was going into a Bacta tank. And of course, another opportunity to see Mara. Like, oh, there you go. Great. Luke he even specifically thinks about how how strangely peaceful their interaction was. Like, yeah, I guess this is something to wonder about at this point, because for no real reason other than people not getting the character, this wasn't like it wasn't peaceful for quite a while now. Like, yeah, I guess at this point it would be something you don't really expect. But yeah, that's it. Luke has a vision. He specifically sees Han and Leia in trouble, and also Mara lying like in the water, like in some kind of water he doesn't know yet, and she's dead. And he himself, he's like trying to figure out, okay, where did I see Mara? And he tries to somewhat recreate his dream, because I think he was in a canyon during this dream, and so he's trying to like basically search for planets and find the specific kind of canyon that he saw in his vision. And R2 eventually finds a planet called, that's going to be interesting, TheJadedTalk. I don't know how to pronounce that. Did you know how to pronounce that? Wait, I'm going to type it in the private chat. That's how it's TheJadedTalk, you know?
I usually just skip over the Zon words.
Yeah, this is definitely a Zon word where it's like, oof, I don't know if I'm gonna remember this. So it's CEJANSIJ. So Sejansic.
I think that sounds about right.
Sejansic. It sounds like a scuffed surname from Yugoslavia. So pronounce that whichever way you will. It's a planet, nevertheless, and this is like when he sees the planet and he recognizes it, he feels as though, okay, this is probably what I've seen. He had pretty detailed memories, so it's also good because you could ask the question of, oh, okay, he saw this random planet that he doesn't know of in his dreams, and among like the millions of planets that exist, he easily found that one. But actually there was explanation. He has very detailed memories about how that place looked like. He was able to feed that info to R2, and he filtered out the planets that were possible. So it's like, okay, hey, that's once again, that's always, whether the result is satisfactory is always one thing, but the signal that this was taken seriously and you could see, okay, this is a problem, I need to find a solution for this. That's always what impresses me. It's if you see that there's a narrative problem that you need to solve, that's like half of the thing already for me. And if you then manage to even do it well, that's even better. And yeah, was a nice solution for how Luke found this planet so quickly. And he wants to go there since, whatever happens there, he feels like he needs to be there. And he also thinking about what he saw, quote, while also trying really hard not to think about his vision of Mara. Okay, he cares about that character. That's cool. That's pretty nice, actually. So yeah, there you go. That's his mission now. Chapter 13. Han and Leia, they go to Botha Wui. It's always interesting to try to pronounce that word as well, but I think Botha Wui is probably what's correct. They go there with 3PO. And they had a pretty interesting thing with 3PO going on. So they want to access like basically information that only somebody from the rank of Borsk failure could do. But they can't, like, they're not going to take Borsk failure with them. So what they do is officially, like, not actually, but officially, they like sell 3PO to Borsk failure so that he's, he now has the power to look through the forged balances. So Leia is supposed to look through it and try to determine on how much time they need to fix this and what they could do and something. Of course, she wouldn't be allowed to do that since she's not a high-ranking Bothan. So that's how they, navigate that thing. 3PO is now Borsk's property and now has the power to act on his behalf. Like, oh, that was a funny idea, I guess, to do that. Yeah. And yeah, they are in. I don't know what the English word would be, like United Clan building or something. It's basically like a governmental building on Botha Wui that belongs to like all clan leaders or something.
Parliament building.
Yeah, more or less like something like this. And there's a protest going on there. And indeed, we find out that there's agitators in that
embassy. Embassy is the word.
Yeah, probably embassy. Yeah. So the embassy on Botha Wui, and there are agitators amongst the crowd that is protesting in front of it. And Han even almost gets killed by one of them, along with a Bothan clan leader who does get killed. And I'm like, okay, I guess, because Han went on the balcony, and that's how the protesters, like the agitators, saw that he was out there and immediately tried to kill him. Like, I guess he shouldn't have gone outside, but really, who can blame him for being curious? That's just kind of what you do. So I get that that's happened, but yeah. So and Leia tries to defend like the what the rioters are doing right now, because they've started to do this in a lot of places where they start throwing things. Like I think they started with throwing like tomatoes or fruits or something. And then at some point they switched that to throwing stones and like actually damaging property. And Leia's like, they aren't that bad. Maybe we shouldn't respond too badly. It was just, I understand what she means. Like they didn't kill anyone yet or something, but that was just kind of funny to see that. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, they are kind of fucking up your buildings. That's not good. And yeah, apparently, so what? Oh yeah, something I need to mention again. Leia once again really pronounces that she's a Jedi, much more than she's done in any of the last 20 books combined, more or less. It's pretty cool because she stands there like in front of the writing crowd with her lightsaber, like to really give off the impression of she's more than just politician Leia, which is pretty nice. And yeah, so somebody, we don't immediately learn how, but somehow there was a shot fired into the crowd from the embassy building. So, because somebody gets killed, they immediately start storming the building. And while they do that, Leia, she uses the Force to jump to safety. And she even tries to specifically stay out of any fights. And she even signalizes for Han and the Noghri to do the same. Like, hey, the situation is fucked up right now, but let's not kill anyone. We're going to regret that. So that was pretty cool. It made a lot of sense. And yeah, what we learned, what actually did happen is that the agitators, so they set up a device. So that device was I think it was on the wall, on the outer walls of the embassy building. They managed to shoot at this thing with with a blaster, basically, that's shooting invisible shots. I immediately started like, wait, first of all, how did someone manage to climb on this building and position it right there? Because it feels like all the outer walls of the embassy building would be perfectly secure and nobody could do anything there without somebody knowing. So I wasn't quite convinced by that. But yeah, Han, essentially this was done to frame Han. I mean, it was more or less done to frame really anyone who was there, but Han just happened to come outside onto the balcony as that happened, and people clearly saw Han. and like from the general area of where he stood, there was a shot fired into the crowd. So people now assume that it was actually Han who shot into the crowd and killed a rioter, which was, I mean, yeah, that's probably like the most believable framing that Han ever had to be subjected by by the general public or the New Republic. So it's like, okay, I mean, it was set up this way, so it makes sense that Han is a suspect in this killing of a writer. So that's that. And yeah, as I said, it was done with a blaster specifically that shoots invisible blasts. And like, okay, this immediately sounds like this could be overpowered. It could be way OP, a blaster that shoots with invisible shots. That's crazy strong. But we immediately get that, using this kind of blaster is very expensive. The blaster gas that you shoot with works only with very, very specific kinds of blasters. And it's really, really not that accurate. And you can only shoot like 5 shots before you need to reload. It's like, okay, this is, I mean, still, it sounds like a very, very useful, it could still be a very useful sniper tool for like if you're more in short range, because nobody's going to see where the shot came from. But that you immediately get all these qualifiers like, okay, this is very strong, but there's this, and this. Like, okay, good. Because, a clear recognition that this is a problem and immediate counter so that no confusion rises up. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to hear. And yeah, exactly. That's what we get. And one of the a bit, I felt like this could have been a bit more meta commentary. One of the Nogri tells Han that, quote, "Once again you're accused of something you haven't even done." Like, yeah, that's Han, poor old boy. he
never catches a break.
He never catches a break
now, man.
Yeah, but that's the most believable thing that Han is accused of, because there was an actual setup that made it.
He was actually blamed for it instead of just blamed.
It's exactly like, oh, that must be you. Like, oh, okay, then I guess that was me. Fuck off. Yeah, that was an actual successfully done framing, kind of wonky in places, but it at least makes sense the way that people respond to Han for this. So, and Han getting, he gets the info and he understands that this is something that specifically Imperials do. The Nogri tell him that, and there's kind of this little awkward moment where there's this acknowledgement that yes, the Nogri at some point were a part of the Empire, active part of the Empire, and that's why they would know that this is an Imperial tactic. But Han now feels like, okay, this was the Empire. Who is in charge of the Empire right now? Basically, the one he knows is Pelion. So what he just vows to somehow pay this whole ordeal back to Pelion in a way. We don't know yet how exactly that's going to happen, if it's even going to happen at all. But from the way he frames it, it's like, okay, no, we have to expect that at some point when Han encounters Pelion one way or the other, he will try to do something, unless he's learned that this wasn't him before that. Because of course that's all still the doing of the triumvirate, like of Dizra, Tears, and Flynn. So yeah, and it's like it also makes perfect sense of him to think that, because of course, like, there's no way Han would be able to guess that there's internal strife there. So yeah, makes sense to think that was Pelion. Yeah. Chapter 14. We are back with Mara. She looks at her lightsaber, or of course it's Anakin's lightsaber, and she thinks about how she doesn't even really know what her and Skywalker are anymore, and what he even is anymore. Which, once again, that's like the continuous like frame that Luke is in now. People don't quite understand or get him, and also that she specifically doesn't get what they are specifically. And it's like, yeah, I kind of feel the same. I know what you should be, but I don't know what you actually are, because there's a little discrepancy between there. And that was just a nice little scene. And what she does now is she lands in front of specifically a fortress. She gets abducted by a bunch of what we just learn are like little fast creatures. They have some connection to Luke. They somehow know who Luke Skywalker is, so because they ask her about it. What? I'm sorry?
Have eyes.
Yeah. Crazy thought. People know Luke Skywalker. That's just a thing, Even little creatures have heard of him at some point, because you're not fucking blind, I guess. But oh well, yeah. There you go. These little fucking stupid creatures on this backwater planet or whatever have more like intelligence than Morith do, which I guess would be correct.
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah, I mean, of course, Morith Duel, he's an alien. He wouldn't, or like the Coruscant Republic, the aliens wouldn't know what the humans look like. They all look the same. It's like, that's so clumsy. I'm sorry. You can do this with Mon Calamari, who like on screen actually all look the same. You can't pull this off with humans because no, sorry. Yeah, exactly. And of course, Mara Jade now has to be saved. Presumably that's gonna be Luke, and towards the end of the book we will learn, yes, indeed, Luke's gonna do that. And otherwise, that's really all there was to say about that chapter. I think it was a bit more just description of her, like what the place looks like and how she's sneaking around there, but that was the gist of it. Chapter 15, also not a bunch of stuff happening here. Lando tries to hire a mercenary army specifically because he wants to do is he wants to protect his ore, like his, some metal ore shippings. But the thing is that he can't really get any mercenaries to work for him anymore, because everyone at this point is getting hired for far more expensive work, like protecting whole planets even, because like the Kamasi thing, it has sort of like reached a level at this point where all discussions about things happening aren't really about Bothans and Kamasi anymore anyway. It's been more used as like a justification to reopen old wounds, to try and settle old scores, and that's just kind of the whole New Republic is just kind of in a free fall basically, and that's why everyone's scrambling, trying to find mercenaries to protect their to protect their planet, their systems, because the security just isn't, it's collapsing basically. So okay, makes sense. There's there's no way somebody would work for Lando if they could like get a whole lot more money to protect whole systems, because also the New Republic now famously is trying to be less centralized. That's also why the armed forces of the New Republic are less involved in the actual systems. That's going to be something we're going to talk about, because that's one of the things I'm not quite convinced of just yet, at least not in its application. But yeah, that's what's happening, and that makes perfect sense. And Lando encounters Senator Miatamia. He's from Diamala. He's one of the planets from the very early conflict that was mentioned in the book, like early in the book. And he's like, he might get a contract with him, like that could enable him to use the official army of Diamala if Lando gets Miatamia safely off the planet, because his ship, as one of the senators who's more outspoken for being like compassionate and a bit more forgiving towards the Bothans, he's now the subject of riots as well. His ship on the planet, on the hangar, is surrounded, so he encounters Lando, who I think he's even been following for a while, because he knows he's one of his cards off the planet. He's like, yeah, can you help me? And he's like, okay, yeah, we can talk about the details of our little deal here. It's like, okay, makes sense that all of this is happening the way it is. Tyr specifically finds out that Miatamia is flying on the Lady Luck with Lando, And what he wants to do is he wants to try and to abduct them, at least, like, or to intercept them. Supposedly, he wants to do something that's gonna frost like their relations in the New Republic even more and start to destroy the peace efforts as well. Because of course, if Pelion actually in any way tries to, or like successfully manages to get a message to the New Republic, if the Imperial forces are interfering with that by just abducting senators, of course, that's going to foil Pelion's plans. So that makes sense. And yeah, that was all from this chapter. Chapter 16. Pelion, he appeals now to a guy called General Hestive. He's the general of Yaga Minor, and he gets his support for his for his efforts to try and capitulate. He says that there is no shame in retreat. Thrawn retreated all the time when it was prudent, and that their ideals could live on if they aren't fully eradicated. Because of course, if you die to, like, if you fight to the last man, the Empire is just going to cease to exist altogether. Whereas in this way, you can at least further propagate your ideals just on a smaller scale, and perhaps retread that conflict in the future. So makes perfect sense. Hestive very briefly mentions Tears. He apparently pretended to be another, to be like on another stage. So he didn't say that he was under Dizra's command. He pretended that he was from somewhere else. And he tells that Pelion, of course, Pelion knows that no Tears officially. So he's just, the thing is, his former identity as an Imperial Guard is a secret. He's just pretending to be like a major under the command of Dizra. And of course, Pelion immediately knows, wait, no, he's not there. He's under the command of Dizra. Of course, he's had his conflicts with Dizra building up already, so he's suspicious. And he visited the archive of Yaga Minor, so the Ubicturate. And apparently, he just was there and never took any information with him. Like, the Hestive has like a logbook. Like, yeah, he never took anything from me. I don't know what he did. And Pelion assumes that he has access to something called special reports, considering specifically that he's the advisor of such a slippery admiral like Dizra is. Like, okay, makes sense. Yeah. So the guy who supposedly controls the Ubicturate, he doesn't have access to this. Of course, Pelion also doesn't have access to this, but he knows that this kind of thing is a thing. He doesn't know yet why. Like, he has no assumption specifically on why Tears would have that access, other than really it's Dizra. Dizra's doing weird shit. Maybe he has found a way, and that makes perfect sense for him to be suspicious of that. And also, another spark that's going to eventually, I think, erupt into full-blown conflict between them. He also therefore determines that he can only add or delete something, because he's like, the archives on Bastion have the same content as the archives on as the Ubicturate on Yaga Minor. So he either added something specifically to this place, or he deleted something from here. Which of course also makes sense. And he suspects that it's either something about Karmas, because Pelion probably also sees that this is a possibility for, it's been communicated as like, hey, this is a possibility to get the New Republic into a weaker state so we could actually prolong our military conflict. So he knows, okay, there's going to be connection here. He's going to try to abuse this little mistake here. Or it's not a little mistake, this huge thing, actually, this document, this very important one, to fan the fire of conflict even more. Or he's going to try and delete some information about Dizra's partners, who of course Pelion wants to find out, because he basically knows that Dizra is doing something. He just needs to find the proof and to get something, something that's actually tangible against him. He also assumes that because of the recent events, like his falling outs repeatedly with Dizra. Like, yeah, makes sense. That was chapter 16. So chapter 17, we get introduced to somebody called, like, he's an observer. He's called Machine Tray, Machine Tray, from a species called the Relaren, and he follows Luke. And observers are openly, they are informants basically, but they are openly operating on a planet. So everyone knows they are reporting back to the New Republic, and they are very, they're supposed to, like, inform about just general suspicious governmental behavior. So yeah, makes sense. They are open to see for everyone, so they're not infiltrating anything, they're not spying on anyone. It's just they are there, they check what's going on, and if something shady is happening, they report back to the New Republic without ever having broken any law or directly, getting involved somewhere where they aren't supposed to be. They have very clear limits. They're usually employed by, highly moral species that are born far away from the area that they're observing. So of course that there's a to acknowledge that there's a difference between all these species, that some have the capacity maybe to first of all, the capacity from their species to be more morally influenced, that they won't do something they're not supposed to do, and also that they have no biases because they're part of the sector. Therefore, it's important that they come from, like, a totally different area of the galaxy. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. That makes total sense to me. It's pretty good. And there's that little scene where he informs Luke that there's a demonstration. There's a demonstration of the Sejanzic. Yeah, no, it's the Sejanzici. So that's the population there, and it's how it's pretty peaceful, and most people just want justice, not only for the Kalamasi but also for the others. It was just kind of a nice scene. It's also good because a lot of the protests you'll see are going to evolve into riots because they are the center stage for the villains, of course. But this one was just a genuine, normal protest. And Talon is also on the planet. He's specifically looking for agitators because he's been made aware that they are a thing, and he knows that whoever is behind all of this deteriorating so quickly is also behind these agitators, which makes perfect sense. And that's the moment where Luke and Talon get the message from Mara that that she was abducted by those weird ships and those little creatures on the planet that she was on, and and Luke remembers that he also encountered those ships back in the pirate base where they were. This random ship that just was there and went away again. That's the same ships that now Mara encountered on that planet, and that, and him feeling like he's indebted to Mara because she saved him from the pirate base, is what drives him now to go to the planet Mara is on himself and try and save her. Perfectly nice and sensible. Chapter 18. Chapter 18 is kind of an outlier. It's the first, or it's like one of the first chapters. I think it's actually the first chapter where full Rogue Squadron is back. Not with all characters, but of course Wedge is there, Corin is there, and they get called to the Sith Creek system. And there's two. So there's a species called the Freslix or Freslix. I don't know. That's kind of what they are. So in German, at least, they were spelled that way. It's FREZHLIX. LIX. That's the way they were spelled in German, and they are blockading the Sifkri, the population there, since they voted to not further try and pursue the Bothans, whichever Bothans it was, that committed the crimes on Karmas. So they go to a foreign system and they blockade it, and the blockaders cheekily tell Rogue Squadron who's there that this is an internal conflict where Garm Bel Iblis, he's commanding Rogue Squadron, and he is there with his own ship, and that they can't interfere. And to me, that was like the first, I don't quite believe this. So it sounds kind of ridiculous to me. And it probably shouldn't be a thing. It's like they are blockading not even only a planet, but like a whole system, I think, with military force, and they are stopping like cargo ships from reaching the planet. And that, I mean, like military action against another member of the New Republic, even if nobody has shot yet, but they are taking military action. That sounds to me like it immediately is the reason that a New Republic response is justified. But Garm Bel Iblis kind of acknowledges that, yeah, he's probably right. So I guess he actually is right that he has no actual authority to act against them. And that was, I think this thing, the application of the New Republic is not supposed to interfere with problems anymore unless they are called to by somebody. I think that's my least favorite application of that, because the principle, I think, is perfectly fine. But there should be like a thing where there's like, at some point, the New Republic has the authority to interfere, even if nobody asked for them, specifically if members are actually having military conflict with each other. And that was probably like my least favorite part of the book, I feel like, the application of that new principle, at least partially. So that's just kind of, but they have a smart way of navigating around that thing. But yeah, that's just, that wasn't something I liked. And yeah, Bel Iblis then has a pretty nice idea that he thinks that there might be, because Booster Tarek, he's still an active smuggler, and he wonders, like, does Booster Tarek have like a smuggler ship among the fleet of cargo ships that's been hindered from landing on the planet? They scan through it and they're like, yep, there actually is. And so what he does is he sends out Rogue Squadron. So you have to realize the positioning. We have the New Republic fleet, then we have the blockade fleet, and behind that we have the cargo ships. So the fleet of the blockade is in between the New Republic fleet and the cargo ships. So he sends Rogue Squadron to investigate, and they need to pass these ships to reach to reach the cargo ships. And Bel Iblis is also like, we're not going to fly around them and give them a chance to intercept us. No, we're going to fly straight through their ranks and go to the smuggling ship. And because the blockaders, they are pretty nervous, and what they do at some point is they open fire on Rogue Squadron. So Bel Iblis is immediately like, okay, you've opened fire on our ships, your game now. And so they attack them. And even though we learned that, yeah, there was actually smuggling ships there, and that it actually was a smuggling ship, and there was also repercussions to Booster Tarek being found out that he's smuggling there, I do have this feeling, even though I think there's no direct mentioning of that Bel Iblis did this on purpose to provoke the blockade to attack him, so he has a justification now to interfere. That sounds to me like something Garm Bel Iblis would do, so I don't think that's too far off. Yeah, I think he fully knew that they would be nervous probably and shoot at Rogue Squadron, and that gives him the possibility to now attack himself and do what he perceives as the correct thing to do, which is perfectly understandable for me. And if that was the intention, then I like it a lot. Yeah. Exactly. And after, during the aftermath, Bel Iblis is supposed to return to Coruscant, but he finds out that the HoloNet relays, how do you pronounce it? Relays, some device from the HoloNet on Mengini, I think would be the planet, got attacked by Mengini, yeah, gets attacked by something they just pronounce as subversive elements. And Rogue Squadron immediately thinks that there's a specific group that's responsible for that. And they're slowly coming to realize, like, okay, all of this happening is starting to far outgrow just a few fanatics who care about Bothans and Kamasi. That's like, I think that's one of the earliest mentions of that. Like, yeah, this is really not about Kamas anymore, because things are growing out of control quickly, and it, like, this blockade, like, sure, it's kind of about like it's tangentially about Kamas as well, but there's this very, very obvious feeling that, okay, that's just used as a justification now to start all kinds of conflicts, and it's not actually about that anymore. Chapter 19, Lando and Miyatama, they get intercepted by Flim, so by fake Thrawn. So they get pulled into a tractor beam. I even like how Lando almost manages to escape the tractor beam. What he does is he shoots a proton torpedo. It like interferes with the beam when it's shot and explodes. So like the explosion is what briefly stops the tractor beam from working. He doesn't manage to escape ultimately, but that was the closest a character could get reasonably to escape. So that was pretty cool. They meet with Thrawn, with Flim, who offers himself to meet the Bothan clan leaders to solve the Kamas affair. So it's like, okay, I'm offering you this opportunity. Give me a few hours or something with the clan leaders of Bothan, of the Bothans, and I'm gonna solve this whole affair. And Lando keeps remembering, like, no, this guy definitely died. He can't be dead. And he even asks Flim, like, where he specifically was at a moment. I think it was, I think he asked about Merkur, so like at the beginning of the Thrawn trilogy, and to test if he's legit. And he does provide the answer ultimately. He, of course, the Empire has very detailed reports about everything that Thrawn did. So he studied all of those and knows what Lando is implying, which is pretty cool. And that's really all there was to say about this chapter. Nothing more to say here. Chapter 20. The Senator of the Ishori. So if you remember, it's one of the other conflicts that was mentioned in the beginning. He doesn't believe the story of Thrawn's return. So now Lando and Miyatama have returned. Nor do they believe in a reason they should let him interrogate Bothans if he were alive. Because it's like, it could be that this, just, he's like, oh, this just by chance supports the positions of Diamala about Kamas, which is not all Bothans should be judged for the actions of presumably a few Bothans. And he also questions the positions and the allegiance specifically of Lando, Han, Talon Karrde, and also Leia. It's kind of understandable that he basically shoots his bullets at everyone. It's ultimately very short-sighted and stupid, of course, which is, I wrote down sarcastically, which is precisely what I expect from a decaying faction that is slowly moving on its way to be replaced. It's like, okay, all of this is pretty insane. He's like also opening all these old wounds. Like, yeah, I mean, Talon Karrde is fair game to me. He never pledged allegiance to the New Republic. Why does he get to be amongst these high-ranking people? That's fair, but like Lando, Han, even Leia, because of course she's protecting Han because of this whole Bothan embassy thing. It's at least understandable how somebody who's as fired up as he is could reach that position, which is enough for me that I'm accepting this kind of rhetoric. It borders to me on this is stupid, but I think it's right at the edge where it's still like, okay, I understand this. This does make sense. He's very emotional. He's kind of dumb. He more or less seems to want conflict as well, which then makes sense, like why he would be this confrontational.
Everything just kind of makes sense for the last like 10 chapters. There's really not much else to say. Would you just explain what happens?
It's funny, yeah. I think, I don't know if it was Greyholm or if it was Tyrannus who just, or maybe it was Civet, yeah, like the most part, like the most comment you'll have on most parts of the book are like makes sense. Like, yeah, this is set. This seems logical.
That checks out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that passes the sniff test. It passes all further investigation. Yep, makes sense. Moving on. Which is kind of refreshing. It's like, yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time, because like I get when you want to do like grandiose, bombastic stuff, and oh my god, all this, like, I don't know, fucking sun crusher, and we have this thing we can destroy an entire solar system, or I don't know, look, there's another super star destroyer and we're wiping out a planet. It's like, okay, there's a time and place for that, but actually just making stuff that makes sense, that's preferable. Like, because yeah, like Specter of the Past, there's not a lot of grandiose, big, like very great stuff happening. It's just, yeah, it's
building up. It's building up.
It's building up. There's a lot of stuff happening. A lot of it is obvious build up for something that's going to happen later, and otherwise it's just a book that makes sense. Yeah, that's a crazy thought. I know, but yeah, exactly. And Taloncourt, he's in orbit on Coruscant. He didn't get permission to land, and they specifically even checked, like I think Talon mentioned that, oh yeah, the guy who was supposed to give me a landing permission, he's in a Shori. So I'm like, because there's no reason really given why he isn't allowed to land. He's just not allowed to. So I'm like, we're probably never going to hear about this, but I'm like, okay, this Ishori should probably be punished, because that's unprofessional behavior. Like, if they pull this stuff off on their own planet, that they could be like, okay, yeah, whatever, do whatever you want. But he is an employee of the New Republic, so I'm gonna headcanon that he got some form of punishment, because yeah, that's just a minor thing that's not gonna be mentioned again. And yeah, and now we see that sleeper agents are getting activated. So we're just joining this random group for like a very quick interaction. I think they're like farmers, and it's like, oh yeah, we've actually got the signal now. It's been a while, but yeah, here we go. And that's all we know for now. Chapter 21. So Shada, the assassin that we learned about earlier, she wants to talk to Leia specifically, and what she does is she puts up a pretty good costume. So I think she bought like a wedding dress and like a specific wedding band that's like immediately recognizable as, okay, this is a bride. She bought like some cheap liquor and that she poured on herself a bit, so she looks like she's a heartbroken, left behind bride to be. So what she's doing is she's going to what was it called? Aurawood Tower. Aurawood is like, I think it was a wood on a forest on Alderaan that at some point was built as like a replacement home for the Alderaanians. But then the Thrawn campaign happened. Coruscant was very, very, risky to live on during that time, because it seemed close to being captured or destroyed by Thrawn. So they never went back to that place. So it's just kind of a normal touristy hotel, I think, at this point, like a living complex, which was also nice. It's like, I think the Alderaanians even said, like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to go on a planet that's even a bigger target than Alderaan used to be. Yeah. And now New Alderaan exists as well, so no reason to go back to that tower again. And Leia went to that tower, so I assume Shada just saw her go in there, and that's why she knows where she is. She also knows which apartment building. I don't know why exactly, but she's a spy lady, so I guess we're just meant to buy that thing for a bit. And yeah, she has that whole camouflage thing, like the whole bright costume, because she goes onto the roof of the tower. Of course, on the roof there is a Nogri. sort of makes sense that they would want to protect that. She pretends as though she wants to commit suicide. The Nogri, of course, stops her from doing so, and that's how she, like, in a surprise attack, ambushes him and manages to dispose of him quickly. Like, she doesn't kill him, but he's unconscious. And that made me wonder, because that's a thing as well, like, because the Thrawn trilogy has been such a long time for me. I don't know if I ever thought that the Nogri were supposed to have, like, superhuman strength. I assumed, like, I don't know, that they were at least maybe not quite the strength of a Wookiee, but, you know, somewhere in that league. So it was kind of a surprise to me that that he actually got beaten by Shada so quickly, because I think she just did like a quick move and he was out. So it's like, okay, either she's very good and we don't quite know why yet, or the Nogri aren't supposed to be like this strong as I thought I remembered them to be. It's like, okay, like, if they're just, you know, if they're pretty strong but not like absurdly strong like a Wookiee, then I guess that makes sense, and that's it. But yeah. And oh yeah, by the way, the assassin, like the sisterhood or something that she's a part of, are called the Mistral. So that's the name. So yeah, as I said, the Orua Tower, I think that's a pretty nice concept. Yeah, so the crew, so like generally just our heroes, they now want to try to take care of Ka'amas first. The New Republic is basically so shit and divided at this point that they won't be able to actually fight Thrawn in this state. So they need to get rid of the thing that's driving, like, that's the only thing that makes sense that's driving a wedge between them, which is the Ka'amas affair. So of course their goal is now to clear that out so everyone can focus on Thrawn. Makes perfect sense. Shada, meanwhile, she's now on the roof. She bought like a rope as well. She climbs down the building until she reaches the window of what I assume is the Solo Kids room, because there's a room that's vacated. The Solo Kids are with Chewie on Kashyyyk, by the way, that's a good hiding spot, I feel like. Makes sense. At least it's not poor old Winter again, so it's Chewie. That's good, and he gets to spend time with his family as well. You're now two things immediately solved there. That's good. Exactly. So she climbs down with a rope, and yeah, even though that room is vacated, I feel like inside of that room, looking out, there should be a Nogri as well. That's just my thing. There is like an alarm system there. But I think it got mentioned that this alarm system is specifically made for approaching speeder bikes, because, like, you know, perhaps none of the Nogri would have imagined that anyone is crazy enough to climb down that tower. Like, I mean, I guess sure, but I don't think this is good enough justification. Either there's an actual alarm system for if somebody moved there, or at least there should be a Nogri being in that room. Like, maybe he doesn't need to look out all the time, but in that room, I feel like makes some sense, because I mean that room is a potential entrance point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she did. The other alarm, you know, the alarm doesn't go off because it's not meant to target her. Lando, so in that whole conversation, Lando and Talon-Karrde are there. He quickly pulls Talon-Karrde out, and he tells him about the plan, because, like, hey, there's a guy who could help us. And they're not telling Han and Leia who this guy is. But Lando, like, talks to Talon in private, and he says, we need to go to the planet called Exokron to get the help of Talon-Karrde's old rival, Cardass. I did wonder, like, why would they keep this a secret from Han and Leia? The only thing I could really come up with is maybe then they don't want to further compromise them by giving them information that can't necessarily help them at this point, because Leia and Han are both under suspicion now of not being, you know, like of hindering the process of justice, I guess, towards the Bothans, and also people are suspicious towards Leia of why Talon Card has like a direct line, like a direct phone line to her, basically. So that, okay, if that's the reasoning, I guess that makes sense, and I can reasonably assume that this is the reasoning. So yeah, that's that, and he tells Talon Card about this plan. And yeah, at least so the Nogli very quickly realize that, okay, the guard on top of the roof isn't reporting back. Something's happened here. And yeah, and that's when Shada decides to step out. So chapter 22. So Shada steps out, is like, hey, here I am. I was the one. She immediately gets surrounded by Nokri. And I was like, okay, it makes sense to me that Leia doesn't kill her, because, Leia now, she's much stronger in the Force. She's very calm. She senses no ill intent from her. But because people especially were like described as being very afraid, I feel like at least a stun shot would probably be what somebody would immediately shoot, because you don't know who this person is or why she's here. So it feels like if there's someone who took out a Nokri and then climbed in through the window, I mean, that they don't know that yet, but probably one of them would immediately take her out. But I mean, she doesn't mean any harm, I guess, so it has no ramifications either. But that's just something I thought of in that moment. Oh yeah, something I only found out here because I didn't read the book. So Shada is from a short story from Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. I didn't know that. If you've read that, then here's a reference to that, which was pretty cool. She gives like a very brief summary, I guess, of what she specifically did there, which is like more or less like unofficially helping the rebellion a bit. It's and I looked that up on Wikipedia, like that was her first appearance, because there's even a picture from the movie of her, so she's, I guess, one of the characters you see in that little
in the cantina.
Yeah, exactly. She's one of the characters that you get to see. So
the other girl there is the one that she was talking to way earlier in the book.
Exactly. Clayori. Yeah, exactly. The other one. So
the one that
they both have. Yeah. So they both have an actual actress as well. Which, I mean, that's pretty cool. And yeah, if you've read that short story, I guess it would be cool to have that reference there. I didn't, so I didn't know who that character was. So yeah, and she basically just says like that she wants a job. She worked for Mazik, and I guess I think Talon even knows that, because of course he would know Mazik as a smuggler. But yeah, we don't really get why precisely she wants to work for Leia, because of course she's like, well, why didn't you, like, we have a bunch of official application offices, why didn't you go there? But she wanted to speak to Leia specifically. We don't get reasoning. We might get some more. I think the most charitable interpretation of that would be the Mistral are a very, very successful and skilled assassins clan. So I guess now that she's openly left them, she's going to be afraid that they are not going to let this one sit just like that. So they're going to pursue her. And I guess she just thinks, yeah, my biggest chances of surviving this and getting help is by joining the New Republic. There's no mention from her that this is the reasoning, but I think it's pretty logical that this would be her reasoning, because it's only now at the beginning of the book that she left the Mistral Sisterhood. So yeah, that makes sense to me. And that was also really everything that was to tell about this chapter 23. We're back with Road Squadron. They go to Botha-Wui. There's a species there called the Larisai, who are there to basically also settle a score. So two of their people were killed during the riots we saw on Botha-Wui, in the embassy building. And their local law demands that if one person is killed and the guilty party is not brought to justice officially, like by admitting that they did it, they get to kill 10 innocent people, like as retribution. And since 2 were killed, they're going to kill 20. And I think they immediately see like there's some mining station there, and there's like vaguely 20 people on that station. So like, oh, okay, they're just gonna kill this, like destroy this. Like that's their law. And I wrote down like I don't like that the New Republic ever gave off the impression that this is okay, but I guess it's more so than that they see the New Republic is so much in disarray that they probably can't do anything about it, or at least they are this cocky about it. That's really the only thing I have to say. Either they really gave off the impression that this would be okay, or they just believe it. We know it's not okay, but there's nothing they can do about it now. So yeah, that's it really. And yeah, they won't. Apparently, they won't get charged for doing anything wrong there with the Bothans, because the councilmen wouldn't vote for it, because they don't want to punish the Bothans for karmas as well. So they're like, oh, you're gonna punish them for doing this, but not the Bothans for the Karmasi affair. That's kind of the reasoning that was given there. And since they also don't charge the guards who killed rioters, including also Han, they don't want to. They don't want to, I guess, get into a position where the New Republic is seen as hypocritical. Or I guess the New Republic wouldn't do that, and that's what they think about this. And also because I guess not everyone would believe that them destroying the Larisai would be self-defense. It's like, I don't know. New Republic is crazy, I agree, but this was kind of pushing the logic for me. It's like, I don't know. I was trying to be more. I'm trying to be as charitable as possible. This is the most I think I can make of this, at least with the knowledge that I have so far. Exactly, and so the Rogue Squadron actually wants to start, but the problem is that their X-Wings were sabotaged by some Larisai mechanics who were there in their hangar. Like, X-Wings should be guarded by somebody from the team. That was my problem in the New Rebellion as well. So I didn't like this was happening, and they also never denied that they did this. They were like pretty proud of it, actually. Like openly they admitted, yeah, we did this. This was great because now like Rogue Squadron didn't lose any one of their members. And Garn Bell Iblis is understandably pretty pissed about this, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna accept that the military is gonna be made into doormats that just can't do anything, and that it makes no sense to him. It's like, yeah, that makes sense for Garn Bell Iblis, and really any sensible person in the military or anywhere else, that you shouldn't really accept this kind of behavior as normal, because yeah, that's not good. And yeah, exactly. And what Han wants to do now, so Han, Shada, of course, she wanted to join Leia. Leia's like, I have nothing for you to do here. So what she does instead is join Talon Card. And Han wants to now talk to Mazik to confirm the validity of the story that she's telling. There's like this fun little moment with Leia where like, oh, don't tell me you worry about Talon. He's like, no, I don't. I just blah, blah. He's like justifying it. It was pretty funny, actually. And also totally sensible, of course. And what he does now is probably one of the greatest suggestions Han had in the entire timeline, which is, hey, Leia, how about we go to this great place called Pakrik Minor? There's just nothing there except farmland and like untouched nature and all these beautiful landscapes, and we just get to chill. Because I mean, Leia questions this decision so much until she recognizes, okay, I guess we kind of were humiliated by our diplomatic blunders, and Gavrison himself is like, you kind of, even though you don't want it, of course, you're kind of making the conflict now worse. So let's just move you out of the equation. You can't really do anything anymore, because now people, of course, always like Han can't do anything anymore. because he's still accused of killing those rioters on Botha Wui, and Leia is protecting him and also telling Card, so she can't do anything anymore either. But, okay, this is kind of the end for us now. We're just gonna go there and have nice holidays, even without the kids. Like, yeah, Chewie can keep them a bit longer in Kashyyyk. It's like, hey, that's great. That's pretty cool, actually.
The Wookiees are pretty strong. I'm sure they can handle things.
Wookiees are strong. They have this neat thing where they can hide anywhere. Like, they have their tree town system. There's gonna be a lot of nice hiding places for them there. So that's a pretty neat idea. And finally, chapter 24, the last chapter. Exactly. So was it chapter 20? Yeah, exactly. It was chapter 24. Exactly. So Pelion, so the Chimera actually gets ambushed by, as was planned, by a fleet that wears, like, I think, Corellian insignia. And of course, they're led to believe that this is Garm Bel-Iblis' response to him. But Pelion immediately doesn't believe the fleet that ambushes him is from Bel-Iblis, because he's like, Bel-Iblis, I know him enough, at least. He's an honorable man. Doing this kind of sneak attack, unannounced, this does not seem like something he would do. And what he does is, like, he encourages to have as little resistance to the attack as possible, just to, like, observe them. There was also, like, the side reason of feeding data to their predictor things, so they can have more training scenarios and training flights, which was just kind of a neat side thing. But his main idea was, let's just wait a bit here. This doesn't seem right. So, and what he does at some point is he sends out a bunch of snub fighters. They have this thing again, like, I think this is from, this was from Darksaber, as far as I remember, that shields of ships that are close to each other can basically, like, stack up. That two shields can protect a ship. One would be its own, and the other from the other ship that's close to it. I guess it's just a thing that has been established by now. I am not a fan of this concept, but it is that's just it. And so he sends out those snub fighters in a very specific formation. And he's like, just like basically in a straight line. He sends them out. He is like, okay, in the same vector, basically, shoot out a bunch of proton torpedoes. And people are like, wait, why are you doing this? And it's like, no, trust me. And then at the end, he orders the snub fighters to make, like, a very, very specific evasive maneuver. And this maneuver enables them to actually successfully destroy one of the battleships of what ultimately, of course, is Zothrop. And Pelion is like, okay, because at that point, then the pirates escape. Of course, the pirates impersonating Bel-Iblis. And Pelion is like, yeah, go out and get the debris there and check whatever you want. But I know that this isn't Garm Bel-Iblis, because the maneuver I just utilized is a maneuver that he came up with in a fight against Thrawn, where, of course, Pelion was present. And he's like, if this guy's gonna fall for this technique, it means that he can't be the true Bel-Iblis, because, of course, he wouldn't fall for his own maneuver there. And it was a pretty smart way of him figuring out, yeah, somebody wants us to believe that this is Garm Bel-Iblis. It could either be the New Republic, because there are people, presumably, in the New Republic who also want to wage a war, or it could be people from our own ranks who want the war to continue, because, like, the pirates really wouldn't just attack like that. This doesn't seem too smart for them. It could be, but Palion's like, nah, that's probably, it's either the Empire or it's the New Republic. And so it's like, yeah, their goal was that we escape from here, so we're just gonna wait instead, because Bel-Iblis is supposed to be here. We're gonna wait out. And that made perfect sense to me. And that's it. That's all of Specter of the Past.
It's like a giant prologue.
It is a very, very long prologue. It at times it does read like one, but I still believe ultimately that no, it's a solid, consistent. There are some logical problems I still have with that book, but it's like no, it's a good book, and sure, it essentially serves as a prologue, but it's well written enough that I don't particularly care a lot about that fact. So, yeah, out of 10, what's your rating? Your ultimate rating now that we've talked about it?
I have it as an 8, and I'm fully okay with it being that being higher than it should be.
I'm trying to think myself. So when I wrote down the notes, I put up a 7 out of 10, where I'm like, this is it's a pretty comfortable pick for me. The characterization of the main cast is great. Even the antagonists, Pelion, is great in this. Overall, the story is interesting. There's some serious flaws for me, and quite a bit of what I assume is filler. But now that I've talked about it, I think 7 out of 10 is maybe too low. If I consider that I also gave iJedi a 7.5, which I would still say probably has more logical flaws by the virtue of being the Jedi Academy trilogy retold. I don't think it would be quite fair to put it up on the same level. So I would probably either 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 as well for me, probably. I think now that I've talked about it, there's still the whole New Republic, how it's responding to crisis. That's still not something I'm fully convinced of. But actually, now that we've talked about it, most of the stuff is pretty solid. With this just being like, this is kind of wonky application of this whole thing. So yeah, I think 7.5 to 8. I might even just say 8, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is a...
You can always change it after Vision of the Future anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to have the comparison there. I'm going to assume I'll love Vision of the Future a whole lot more, just by the nature of what's happening in that book. So I'll definitely be excited for talking about that. But yeah, this is all there is to say about Specter of the Past now. So next week, so yeah, as you can imagine, right now I'm of course reading Vision of the Future. Next week should be fine. We're gonna talk about the first half of Vision of the Future, because it's quite a long one. So as I have said a few times, in German, actually, Vision of the Future are 2 separate books, and each are like 400 pages, I think. So that's the big chunks, as you would say. So yeah, next week is going to be the first half of Vision of the Future. Should be fine. I should have the time for that. And yeah, I think that's really all there is to say from my side, unless you have something final to say.
No. I'll probably have more to say on Vision of the Future one, because
of course that's going
to wrap up to the entire Bantam era, not just this series.
There's going to be a lot. I mean, probably a lot to say that we've said like a million times already, but yeah, this is going to be like the end game finally. We're at the end now. So yeah, that's all there is to say from our part. Thank you for staying with Lau and Pico, and everyone who's going to listen to this eventually. And yeah, hope you join us the next time for Vision of the Future. So see ya. Bye-bye.